Chapter 457. Creak, a sound that seemed to come from the depths of time resounded. The bronze door of the cabin was opened once again. Nangong Wook felt as though he was about to suffocate. As he felt the radiance from the outside, his whole body's power was continuously recovering. He wanted to rush out of this cage-like place, but he discovered that he couldn't move. Even though his power had recovered, he still couldn't move. It seemed as though a heavy mountain was pressing down on his body, making it hard for him to breathe. Nangong Wook widened his eyes and he twisted his butt, trying to get up. But very quickly, he felt a strand of ice-cold hair fall on his neck. His whole body stiffened, and he turned his head with great difficulty, only to see an ice-cold face. That face was expressionless, and it was as cold as ice. Her pitch-black hair hung down like a curtain, and her pale skin was devoid of any color. It was that woman. Nangong Wook really wanted to cry. Why did that woman pester him? Was it because of his handsomeness? Nangong Wook wanted to cry, but no tears came out. He looked at that woman, and he held his breath, not daring to even breathe loudly. That woman's pitch-black eyes locked onto Nangong Wook's body, and she opened her mouth, sticking out her scarlet tongue. "You! What are you doing?" Nangong Wook's whole body stood on end, and he used all of his strength to shout out those words. However, that woman didn't pay any attention to him. Rip, it was as though a piece of ice was streaking across his face. That woman's tongue was licking his face. Nangong Wook was dumbfounded, and he was completely dumbfounded. His whole body was in a mess. Was he being kissed by force? How could she be like this? What happened to her cold and aloof attitude? Strands of black energy seemed to flow along that woman's tongue into Nangong Wook's skin, and his whole body stiffened. After a long time, that woman stood up. Her crystalline feet abruptly pressed against the ground as her figure shot forward like a bolt of lightning. With a loud bang, the cabin's door opened. That woman's black hair fluttered in the wind. With a loud bang, the cabin closed. Only Nangong Wook was left lying there, and his face was filled with despair. He was about to cry. What on earth was he trying to do? Bufang saw the woman. Those cold eyes made Bufang's heart palpitate more and more. He seemed to finally know where his palpitations came from. It came from that woman. This woman was very scary. The black ancient ship continued to move forward. The waves parted, and the seawater actually submerged the island. In front of the ship there was a long black figure standing straight. An awe-inspiring aura filled the air. Xiao Bai immediately returned to Bufang's side. The moment the woman's aura spread out, the purple in her eyes rapidly changed, turning into a deep white. Xiao Bai looked at the woman with vigilance and unleashed his full power. Xiaopi leaned on Bufang's shoulder and curled up drunkenly. "Ha ha! I got it!" A God Realm expert snatched the demonic claw chi fruit and was overjoyed. He was so excited that he almost jumped up. However, he quickly felt his body stiffen. He discovered that the gazes of the people around him seemed to have become a little strange. Nangong Xuanhe had already hidden far away and restrained his aura. He didn't even dare to breathe loudly. He looked at the black ancient ship in fright, and his heart thumped violently. Netherworld ship. It's actually the Netherworld ship. Nangong Xuanhe felt as if he had fallen into an ice cave. One of the most terrifying things in a secret realm was the Netherworld ship. Regardless of which secret realm one was in, encountering a Netherworld ship meant that one wasn't far from death. This was the common understanding of everyone in the Hidden Dragon continent. Very few people could walk out of a secret realm alive after encountering a Netherworld ship. Every secret realm seemed to have a Netherworld ship, but at the same time, there seemed to be no Netherworld ship in any secret realm. Nangong Xuanhe was dumbfounded after encountering a Netherworld ship. He restrained his aura as much as possible so that the woman wouldn't discover him. He didn't want to die. The laughter of the God Realm expert who snatched the demonic claw chi fruit became softer and softer. In the end, his eyes widened. The black ancient ship continued moving forward. It actually traversed the void and floated above their heads. The woman with long black hair glanced at the God Realm expert indifferently and lightly spat out a few words. The God Realm expert howled miserably as he fell to the ground. His body was being torn apart and his blood flowed everywhere. This is a curse. The curse of the Netherworld ship. Nangong Xuanha's heart trembled. He was so frightened that he almost fell to the ground. No one could resist a curse. They all had to die. Nangong Xuanha roared. The God Realm experts in the surroundings also fled in all directions in fright. They wanted to escape. They didn't want to die. The woman's eyes were filled with darkness. Her long hair, which reached her waist, fluttered in the wind, and it seemed like many dense tentacles. Puff, puff, puff. One after another, the God Realm experts' bodies were torn apart, and they turned into minced meat and blood that covered the ground. Nangong Xuanha's aura erupted, and the two chains swayed behind him. He forcefully supported his body, and he coughed out blood. However, he wasn't torn apart by the curse. He staggered as he fled, and he didn't even turn his head back. Bufang felt the blood in his body boil once again, and it seemed as though it was about to rush out of his skin. Bufang's mind shuddered and he let out a deep breath. This woman was really terrifying. However, his blood only boiled for a moment, and in the next moment, it returned to normal. Bufang furrowed his brows as he looked at the pitch-black ancient ship in the sky. He took a deep breath. The woman with long black hair also felt that something was strange. Her black gaze locked onto Bufang's body. Buzz, there seemed to be a strange fluctuation coming from the woman's body. That fluctuation made Bufang feel as though he was being stripped naked. When the woman's gaze swept past Xiaopi's body, she suddenly let out a sharp whistle. Her whistle was extremely sharp. It caused the seawater in the surroundings to explode. "It's you, hand over the crystal source purple essence," the intermittent voice resounded in Bufang's mind. Bufang was startled. Then, he felt an oppressive wave of energy rushing toward him. With a bang, the entire island collapsed. Xiao Bai's eyes flickered unceasingly, and he tried to shield Bufang. However, he was pressed down on the ground by a single finger of the woman, and he couldn't move at all. "Hand it over." The woman's voice became more and more severe, and it was filled with a terrifying killing intent. A pitch-black radiance surged out of her body, and it seemed as though she was burning with a black flame. The flame slowly enveloped Bufang's body. Bufang's heart trembled, and he opened his mouth to spit out a golden flame. The flame soared into the sky, but it was suppressed by the black flame, and it couldn't budge. What kind of flame was that? Bufang was also shocked. It was the first time he encountered a flame that could suppress the 10,000 bestial flames. "If you don't hand it over, die." A thin slit slowly appeared on the woman's forehead, and an aura that made Bufang's heart contract shot out from that slit. Beep, the system buzzed, and Bufang felt a buzzing sound in his ears. It was accompanied by a lazy yawn. "What a familiar aura!" "Bufang, kid, the Lord Go just slept for a while. How did you manage to provoke someone from the Netherworld?" A gentle voice quietly rang out in Bufang's mind. Chapter 458. Magma splattered everywhere. Misha felt his body steadily land on the ground after experiencing the initial fall. He didn't feel the scorching heat that he felt when he passed through the magma. Instead, he felt a slight chill, and a dense smell of blood permeated the air. Misha felt all the pores on his body open up, and an indescribable excitement spread throughout his body. His blood-red robe seemed even redder in this demonic environment, and it seemed as though it was flowing with fresh blood. With every step he took, fresh blood would flow out of his body. The two of them walked in this quiet environment. Misha squinted his eyes, and there was an intense fluctuation in his mind that guided him forward. Although there was only a boundless expanse of blood red in front of him, the excitement that he felt became stronger and stronger. "We're here. We're almost there." Misha muttered, and the pupils of the expert beside him slightly shrank. He took a step forward, and everything in front of him underwent a huge change. A dilapidated blood-red iron tower suddenly appeared in front of them. There seemed to be veined patterns circulating on the blood-red iron tower, and they were filled with mysterious fluctuations. "Is that the Shura Tower?" Misha muttered. Misha knew that the Shura Tower was dilapidated, but from the surface, it seemed to be in perfect condition. The terrifying fluctuations coming from the tower suppressed the true energy in his body, and he was unable to circulate it. This was the Shura Tower's suppression on the experts of the ancient Shura city. Suddenly, Misha's pupils shrank. He discovered that there was actually a figure standing by one of the windows of the blood-red iron tower. It was a tall and sturdy figure, and his blood-red hair fluttered in the wind. His ice-cold and emotionless eyes stared at them. "Bufang, you brat! The Lord Go just slept for a while, and you already provoked the people of the Netherworld. You're still as playful as ever, huh?" A gentle and magnetic male voice resounded in Bufang's mind. This voice caused Bufang to freeze for a moment, and his eyes lit up. It was the voice of that lazy dog, Blackie. Had this fat dog finally woken up? Ever since Blackie ate something in the illusory spirit swamp, it fell into a deep slumber upon returning to the Imperial City. This slumber lasted for a long time. This time, he finally woke up. Moreover, that lazy dog seemed to be very familiar with the Netherworld. The Netherworld ship floated in the void, emitting an oppressive aura. Xiao Bai's entire body was glowing. The magic formation on his armor kept glowing, trying to break free from the woman's pressure. Xiaopi seemed to be waking up as well. He waved his sickle claws slightly. "This Netherworld ship comes from the Netherworld. This woman is from the Netherworld. However, she doesn't seem to be easy to deal with," Lord Go said. Bufang could feel the true energy in his body circulating at high speed. Above his head, white specks of light converged at high speed, gradually forming a vague silhouette of the silhouette of a dog. That was the appearance of Lord Go. The woman's long black hair fluttered in the wind. It was like a sharp arrow, unceasingly lashing at the void, shattering it. A thin slit appeared on her pale forehead, and it seemed as though a vertical eye was about to emerge from it. Terrifying fluctuations filled the air. Nangong Xuanhe rushed far away into the huge waves of the sea. His true energy surged and filled the spirit ship. He didn't even look back as he fled into the distance. He had to escape. Otherwise, he would definitely die. That woman was too terrifying. Her aura seemed as though it could shatter the void. That kind of feeling, even an existence who had broken through 3 of the Supreme Being's shackles would be obliterated in front of her. They weren't existences on the same level. The Netherworld ship, that cursed ship, he had actually encountered it. At this moment, his heart was filled with despair. He didn't know how long he could live, but he really didn't want to die. The woman's ice-cold eyes stared at Bufang. Her killing intent permeated the air, and a vertical eye appeared on her forehead. It gradually opened and shot out a beam of light. The void distorted as it shot toward Bufang. A pitch-black flame danced around the beam of light, and it seemed as though it was a nimble spirit. Bufang's 10,000 bestial flames had already been suppressed and retracted into his body. He was completely unable to resist this woman. However, the silhouette above his head leisurely strode forward. It was still that familiar cat-like gait. A dog's silhouette strode forward with enchanting cat-like gait. The Lord Go was still as flirtatious as ever. Buzz, the Lord Go, which was formed by light and shadow, stood in front of Bufang and raised its dainty dog paw. Bang! The beam of light didn't show any signs of stopping, and it mercilessly collided with the Lord Go's dog paw. The entire island shook violently, and it seemed as though it was about to be shattered into pieces. The surrounding area was filled with towering waves, and the crashing of the waves caused the rocks on the island to shatter and the ground to collapse. The Netherworld ship floated in the air, and its pitch-black sail fluttered in the wind. The woman's pitch-black hair fluttered in the wind, and her pale face was devoid of any trace of emotion. Bufang was also expressionless as he looked at the scene. Waves of energy surged past his body from both sides, but they didn't touch his body at all. Soon, the radiance dispersed. Smoke and dust filled the air, and when the wind blew, it quietly dispersed. The Lord Go, which was formed by the silhouette, was still calmly raising its dog paw. Although the silhouette was a little blurry, its figure was still standing. The Netherworld woman who was exiled in the secret realm. Let's talk things out. Don't fight. The Lord Go's gentle voice rang out from the silhouette. When the woman with long black hair heard his words, her ice-cold eyes seemed to regain some vitality, and she slightly moved. You. How do you know my name? Who are you? The woman's ice-cold voice was somewhat hoarse. I know you, but I won't tell you who I am. Don't worry. Give me, the Lord Go, some face, and I will plead for you when we return to the Netherworld. The Lord Go said mysteriously. When Bufang heard this, he immediately rolled his eyes. This dog was really shameless. She didn't even know who you were, so why would she give you face? The slits on the woman's forehead gradually closed, and a trace of doubt appeared on her stiff face. She took a deep look at the Lord Go's silhouette, and it seemed as though she had thought of something. A trace of fear appeared in her lifeless eyes. It's you. The Lord Go raised its exquisite dog paw and nodded. The Netherworld woman didn't say anything else. She lightly tapped the ground with the tip of her foot and flew back to the ice-cold Netherworld ship. The ship's door opened with a loud bang, and the woman's figure entered it, disappearing without a trace. They stole the crystal source purple essence that I nurtured. I will give you face this time, but don't forget what you said. The woman's intermittent voice drifted over, and in the end, it seemed as though it had disappeared along with the howling wind. The raging waves also calmed down and became gentle. Bufang widened his eyes, and a strange expression appeared on his face as he stared at the Netherworld ship. If he wasn't mistaken, wasn't there someone struggling in the ship's cabin? That person's face seemed somewhat familiar. Nangong Wuk? How did that idiot run into the Netherworld ship? Was he captured by that woman and forced to be her husband? Bufang's heart was filled with doubts, but as the Netherworld ship disappeared into the sea's fog, Bufang didn't have a single clue. Fine. Who cares about it? Crystal Source Purple Essence? Bufang, lad, did you steal her Crystal Source Purple Essence? The Lord Go's roar echoed in his ears, and his voice was trembling slightly. That's right. Bufang expressionlessly nodded his head. Do you know how precious a Crystal Source Purple Essence is? Only one crystal source would contain such a thing in dozens of large origin crystal mines. I owe her a big favor this time. The Lord Go seemed somewhat vexed. Lad, if you don't make me 3 sweet and sour dragon meat ribs every day, I will bite you. The Lord Go seemed somewhat indignant as he spoke. I know, Bufang calmly replied. Then, he took out a jade bottle from his system-dimensional bag, and a rich fragrance wafted out of it. That woman was talking about this crystal source purple essence, right? Bufang asked as he shook the jade bottle in front of the Lord Go. When the Lord Go, who was formed by light and shadow, glanced at the jade bottle, his hair stood on end. Bufang, you lad. Are you trying to cheat a dog? Such a big bottle of crystal source purple essence? It's no wonder that the Netherworld woman wanted to kill you. If it were me, the Lord Go, I would also chase you to the ends of the earth. The Lord Go's voice trembled, and his gentle voice became somewhat sharp. The reason why the Lord Go had fallen into a deep sleep was because he had eaten the crystal source purple essence. However, the crystal source purple essence he had at that time wasn't as big as the one in Bufang's hand. The Lord Go's light and shadow spun around on the spot, and with a bang, it turned into specks of light that filled the sky and dissipated. Stinking lad! Just you wait. Lord Go, I will come over immediately. Leave the crystal source purple essence for me. His voice became softer and softer, and it gradually dissipated. The surroundings became calm once again. The island was in a complete mess, and the demon claw chi fruit, which was emitting a radiance, fell in the distance. Bufang was somewhat bewildered. He took a few steps forward and picked up the fruit. Did I get the fruit just like that? It seemed somewhat easy. Bufang's expressionless face couldn't help but twitch. Then, he flipped his hand and put the fruit into the system's dimensional storage. No matter what, he was still somewhat happy to have obtained a divine realm ingredient. Xiao Bai crawled up from the ground, and his eyes regained their purple color. Xiaopi, who had just woken up, widened his eyes and looked at Bufang. Rumble! All of a sudden, the entire island started to shake. Bufang felt his heart palpitate, and he turned his head to look into the distance. There, steam rose from the waves, and a pillar of fire soared into the sky. It seemed as though something extraordinary had happened. Bufang was taken aback, and his heart started to pound. There seemed to be a dense fluctuation coming from the place where the pillar of fire had erupted. A huge blood-red tower's phantom image stretched across the vast sky. For a moment, several tyrannical auras soared into the sky within the Cloud Sea secret realm. Chapter 459. The phantom of a blood-red pagoda suddenly appeared in the sky. It was reflected in everyone's eyes. The ripples caused by the illusionary pagoda were too intense, causing everyone to feel their blood and chi surging. The berserk aura burst forth from the blood-red pagoda, spreading into everyone's hearts. Waves of tyrannical aura burst forth. The sounds of chains colliding resounded throughout the entire secret realm. Many divine realm experts who had broken through the Supreme Being's shackles couldn't sit still. On an island filled with yellow stones, a bewitching man stuck out his tongue and licked his lip. Behind him, 2 chains were swaying gently. On a lush island, 2 black-robed men carrying bronze chests on their backs raised their heads. They looked at the location of the blood-red pagoda with profound gazes. With a rumble, the 2 of them dashed toward the location of the blood-red pagoda. The chains behind them swayed. The Grand Baron Sex Yi Qing, the Wind and Thunder Pavilions Xiao Chongyun, and the others all moved. The appearance of the blood-colored pagoda was like a lighthouse in the darkness, attracting the attention of every expert, causing everyone to gather towards it. Experts who had broken through the Supreme Being's shackles dashed out from the small islands. For a moment, huge waves were set off on the surface of the sea. However, the phantom of the giant pagoda disappeared as quickly as it appeared. In just a short while, no one could catch a glimpse of it. However, even though the gigantic phantom had disappeared, it had already left a general direction for everyone. Everyone gathered in that direction. Bufang and Xiao Bai naturally wouldn't miss it. They stepped onto the spirit boat and sped away. It seemed as though all the experts in the Cloud Sea secret realm were heading toward that direction at that moment. The aura of the blood-red pagoda was too intense. It piqued everyone's curiosity. It was to the extent that everyone had the thought of obtaining a fortuitous encounter. Didn't they come to the secret realm for a fortuitous encounter? Now that the fortuitous encounter was right in front of them, they naturally wouldn't give it up. As Bufang stepped on the spirit boat, the seawater on both sides of the boat parted. There were already quite a number of experts on their spirit boats appearing around them. They all glanced at Bufang but didn't pay him any attention. Bufang unexpectedly saw Nangong Xuanhe. Nangong Xuanhe seemed extremely shocked as he discovered that Bufang was actually still alive. How was this possible? After encountering the Netherworld ship, how could this person still be alive and well? This didn't make sense. Could it be that the Netherworld ship's curse didn't work? At this moment, Nangong Xuanhe's aura was somewhat weak, and his complexion wasn't very good. When he saw that Bufang was still alive, his complexion became even more unsightly. However, he didn't come looking for trouble. Instead, he steered the spirit boat and entered a huge island that gradually appeared in front of him. This was probably the largest island they had ever seen. It covered a vast area, and the towering coastline attracted everyone's attention, making them feel reverence. Boom boom. An expert's true energy soared into the sky as he dragged his spirit boat into the island. The people present were all divine realm experts with powerful cultivations, so they naturally didn't care about such a thing, and they all set off. For a moment, the sound of something tearing through the air resounded unceasingly. Bufang also landed on the island with Xiao Bai. The moment he landed on the island, he could smell a rich fragrance. This island was actually filled with strange fruit. Some of these fruits looked extremely strange. Every single one of them emitted steam, and they seemed like well-cooked bread. Some of the fruits seemed to be made of sponge, and they were incomparably fragrant. Their flesh was as thin as bread. For a moment, Bufang was somewhat absent-minded. He had a misconception that he had stepped into a delicacy island. Did all these delicacies grow on trees? Bufang plucked a bread-like fruit. It was slightly hot, and he tossed it in his hand as if he was eating a roasted potato. Only after that did Bufang tear the fruit apart like a piece of bread. Instantly, a scorching hot liquid flowed out of the fruit, emitting a sweet fragrance. Smelling the fragrance and looking at the enticing fruit, Bufang couldn't help but be tempted, and he took a bite. The taste was actually not bad. Pure, natural, and pollution-free. It was somewhat magical. Bufang continued to explore. There were many species on this big island, and there were also many spirit beasts. As the crowd descended, the spirit beasts on the island flapped their wings and flew away. Although the scenery on the island was not bad, not many people stopped to admire it. The others were really in a hurry, as they wanted to find the blood-red tower as soon as possible. Their hearts were restless. Their goal was to find the fortuitous encounter. And Bufang's goal was to find the cooking ingredient. This big island seemed to exist for him. Bufang excitedly toured the big island. The island was full of trees, some of which Bufang had never seen before. Among them, there was a tree that looked like the coconut tree Bufang had seen in his previous life. However, this tree didn't bear coconut. Instead, it bore steaming, fragrant white flatbread. The tip of Bufang's foot gently touched the ground, and his entire body slowly flew up. He plucked a piece of white flatbread. This fruit flatbread was really soft. When Bufang took a bite, it was as warm as if it had just come out of the oven. It didn't have any taste. After taking a few bites, Bufang furrowed his brows. Although the fruit flatbread was fragrant and soft, the taste was too bland. It didn't suit his taste. He continued to move forward, collecting some strange fruit. Some of the fruits grew on the ground. After tearing the shell, one could eat the flesh that was like roasted meat. The flesh of the fruit emitted steam, which seemed to be the common feature of the fruits on this big island. There was a loud thud. In front of Bufang's eyes, a fat pig with steam rising from its body dashed. This fat pig's back was red, as if it had been roasted until it turned red. There was even a flame burning on it. This fat pig's nostrils puffed out steam, and its two ferocious tusks dashed around the big island. Bufang's eyes brightened. He knocked it out with the wok, then dragged the fat pig to study it. He carefully cut off a piece of roasted meat from the back of the fat pig. It was somewhat shriveled, without sauce or oil. However, it tasted good. Roasted meat growing on the back of a live pig. It was really strange. Bufang took a bite. It really tasted like pork. However, it was roasted hard, which made it hard to bite. After collecting many fruits, Bufang used the black wok to knock out several fat pigs, then cut off the meat on their back. The fat pig that had its meat cut off could actually run away alive and kicking. In the distance, there was a type of sheep that was lazily eating spirit grass. The spirit grass was filled with spirit energy. The aura of the spirit energy was extremely dense, and it would make people feel refreshed with just a whiff. The meat of these sheep seemed to be glowing, emitting a faint golden light. It was really eye-catching. This mutton was the best ingredient. Bufang took a look, and his heart couldn't help but jump. He felt like he had arrived in heaven. The things on this island were all exquisite ingredients that made him gasp in amazement. Many experts who had landed on the big island were at a loss. They couldn't find the location of the giant blood-red tower. It was here a moment ago, wasn't it? Many people had a headache, so they started to search around the island. Different from the others who were in a hurry, Bufang was leisurely collecting ingredients. Although these ingredients were not high-grade spirit beast's meat, or high-grade spirit herbs and spirit medicines, they were still extremely powerful. However, this kind of unique natural ingredient made Bufang very excited. Bufang found a kind of tree on the small island. The tree had brown fruits, which weren't big. After Bufang picked them, he found out that they were chocolate-like fruit. When Bufang pinched those fruits, they became soft. They were like chocolate, with a bitter and sweet taste. This was a gourmet island. Bufang was sure that it was a miracle of nature. Bufang couldn't help but exclaim in his heart. The others were extremely depressed. They were looking for a big chance, but they didn't know what kind of island they were on. They just wanted to find the giant blood-red tower and get a chance. Dong. Bufang collected some ingredients on the small island. He smashed the black rock on the ground, which made the ground shake. The experts who couldn't find the blood-red tower looked at Bufang suspiciously. However, Bufang's next action made their faces strange. What is this kid doing? Is he going to cook on this island? Is he crazy? We came to this secret realm to find a chance, not to cook. Interesting. This kid can't be a chef, right? He looks a little familiar. Many people knew about Bufang's fame, but there weren't many people in Heavenly Mist City who could recognize Bufang. Because of the Nangong family's incident, many people knew about Bufang. Everyone knew that a chef had entered the secret realm. However, they didn't expect that this chef would cook under their noses. It was a little funny. Bufang didn't care too much about it. His hands were itching. These strange ingredients made him excited. The golden dragon bone kitchen knife appeared in his hand. Ignoring the people's playful gazes, Bufang twirled the knife and dealt with a sheep that was emitting a faint golden light. This sheep was very calm, and its movements were very slow. It didn't struggle, nor did it roar. During the whole process, it just let out a lazy bleat. To deal with the sheep, Bufang didn't need to use the Overlord 13 blades. He just used the meteor cutting technique to cut the sheep into several pieces. After the black wok, he used the pork to cook a thick soup. The fragrance of the soup permeated the air. He added the sheep's bones into the soup and started to stew it. Not long after, thick steam began to rise. The Grand Baron Sex Yi Qing, the puppet sex experts, Xiao Chongyun, and the other experts watched with playful expressions. Nangong Xuanhe hid in the crowd and looked at Bufang with disdain. Bufang didn't care about their gazes. He was very excited about cooking. He skillfully scooped the sheep out of the wok and poured it into a bowl. After boiling the soup several times, the sheep looked as if it was covered with a layer of glistening oil, and a rich fragrance permeated the air. Many experts in the surroundings even had their appetites aroused. Chapter 460. Puff Misha spat out a mouthful of blood and knelt on the ground with an ugly expression on his face. He looked at the figure in the distance in fear. It was a blood-red man who was standing at the top of the tower. That man's entire body was covered in blood. Are you refining the Shura Tower? Who are you? How dare you touch my ancient Shura city's Shura Tower? A large hole appeared on Misha's chest and blood flowed out of it. The blood that flowed out floated in the air and gathered around the man's body. Ancient Shura City? What a joke! I found the Shura Tower in the secret realm and it belongs to me. You came to snatch it from me and now you want to blame me? What a joke! The man said calmly. His voice was dignified and his gaze was sharp. He seemed like an expert who was in a high position. He looked at Misha as if he was looking at a dead man. His gaze made Misha's heart turn cold. Misha was very powerful. He had broken through 3 of the Supreme Being's shackles. With his strength and status, he could defeat everyone in the secret realm. Even the 3 Clouds alchemist, Master Xianbei, couldn't defeat him. Thus, he was very confident that he would be able to find the Shura Tower in the secret realm. However, he didn't expect that even though he found the Shura Tower, he wouldn't be able to bring it back. His companion had already been killed by that terrifying blood-red man. All the blood in his body had been sucked dry and turned into energy that flowed into that expert's body. That guy was simply a demon. Misha suddenly thought of something. When he looked at that blood-red man, he suddenly recalled a legend in the ancient Shura city. It was said that there was a cultivation technique engraved on the Shura Tower that could turn one into a blood-red man and obtain great power. However, that cultivation technique wasn't something that a human could cultivate. It was a cultivation technique that belonged to the abyssal demon. If a human cultivated it, they would turn into a monster. I want blood. I want a lot of blood. I can already smell the scent of blood, the blood-red man said. The greed in his voice caused Misha's body to turn cold. This person had already turned into a monster. I won't kill you. I will let you live. However, I need you to kill everyone on the island. I need their blood. The bloody man's eyes lit up. The light was extremely intense. Blood tentacles spread out and covered Misha's body. They instantly drilled into his body and brought him intense pain. That feeling was worse than death. After a long time, Misha stood up numbly. A surging aura spread out from his body, and the 3 Supreme Being shackles on his back swayed unceasingly. The man covered in blood stood at the top of the tower and watched Misha's disappearing figure. He let out a soft and hoarse laugh. Under his feet, the blood-red tower was rotating slightly, and red light filled the sky. Looking down from the top of the tower, one would see a huge fiery red egg at the bottom of the tower. Traces of a mysterious aura gushed out from the pagoda and seeped into the Shura Tower. A phoenix egg. When the Shura Tower finishes absorbing the essence of the phoenix egg, the Shura Tower will condense a new tower spirit. It will become a true divine artifact. At that time, the Shura Tower will definitely be able to bring me out of this damned place. Whoosh! Everyone couldn't help but take a sniff. They were dumbstruck as they looked at Bufang, who was holding a big bowl and wolfing down the food. They felt that their thoughts were in a mess. Bufang was eating with relish. It was extremely relish. The golden goat's mutton had been boiled several times, and it had become extremely tender and chewy. Moreover, the meat soup that was boiled was neither fishy nor fishy. Bufang poured a small drop of abyssal chili sauce into the meat soup, causing it to become incomparably scarlet. However, what shocked everyone was that Bufang didn't directly drink the meat soup. Instead, he tore the flatbread he plucked from the tree into small pieces and sprinkled them into the meat soup. Only then did he eat it. Would it really taste good like this? Everyone was somewhat puzzled. Only Bufang himself knew whether it would taste good or not. Although the flatbread didn't have any taste, it was extremely fragrant when mixed with the meat soup. Moreover, the longer the flatbread was soaked in the soup, the more fragrant it became. The fragrance of the meat soup was rich, but it also had the unique fragrance of the flatbread. When it entered one's mouth, it brought out an exquisite texture. After absorbing the meat soup, the flatbread had a spicy flavor. When it entered one's mouth, it was incomparably delicious. This was also a dish that Bufang suddenly thought of when he saw the ingredient. In his previous world, this dish was called boiled lamb. Bufang ate happily, causing the people around him to be somewhat dumbfounded. Yang Meiji, who was following behind Master Xianbei, excitedly looked at Bufang, who was eating noisily. She couldn't help but feel a little hungry. She was extremely clear about Bufang's culinary skills. Therefore, when she saw Bufang eating with such relish, she also wanted to try it. Master Xianbei's gaze was grave as he looked at Bufang's cooking process. With his eyesight, He could naturally see that Bufang was constantly pouring his true energy into the wok to maintain the equilibrium of the spiritual energy in the wok. This allowed the spiritual energy to be suppressed within the ingredient. This was an extremely difficult technique, even for alchemy. This youth is an alchemy genius. Master Xian Bei's eyes lit up. He felt that he needed to look for Bufang to have a chat. After all, an alchemist was a high and mighty profession, and they would definitely welcome him. Yang Meiji walked to Bufang's side and casually sat down. She then ordered a bowl of soup. After Bufang finished the last mouthful of soup, he felt his entire body warm up. This golden mutton was truly an extremely high-quality mutton ingredient. After shooting a glance at Yang Meiji, Bufang skillfully scooped a bowl of soup for her. Every bowl of lamb had to be boiled 3 times, and it looked extremely gaudy. However, every time the lamb was boiled, it would become even more sparkling and translucent. Handing Yang Meiji a piece of flatbread, the big woman happily ran to the side and gobbled it up. After eating, Bufang felt somewhat puzzled. Why did this island have so many strange ingredients? Moreover, the quality of these ingredients was extremely high. For example, the pork and the golden lamb. There were also those strange fruits, such as the flatbread fruit, the bread fruit, the chocolate fruit, and so on. There was no reason for them to appear. Bufang could feel that these ingredients contained the same kind of energy. Could it be that this energy had caused these ingredients to change? If so, where did this energy come from? Bufang was suddenly curious about the source of this energy. Of course, he wasn't curious because it was mysterious. He was curious because he felt that since this energy could make these ingredients become so high quality, the source of this energy was definitely a high-grade ingredient. Bufang was a person who loved everyone. As long as it was a good ingredient, he would love it. It was so delicious. Yang Meiji, who was eating at the side, widened her eyes so much that they almost popped out. She almost swallowed her tongue because of the slippery lamb. The flatbread mixed with this bowl of lamb soup was simply an earthly delicacy. Yang Meiji's table manners attracted many people's curiosity. Was it really that delicious? Many experts felt an itch in their hearts. However, many of them couldn't swallow their pride. The Grand Baron Sex Yi Qing, who carried a stone sword on his back, was always maintaining his dignity. The puppet sex experts looked gloomy and didn't have the slightest desire to move. Mu Chunfeng, who was playing with the hair on his temples, snorted arrogantly and ignored them. Xiao Chongyun, on the other hand, walked up to Bufang with a smile and asked for a bowl of boiled lamb. Bufang didn't refuse. There was still some left in the pot, and he couldn't finish it. Xiao Chongyun stared at the big bowl in his hand with a strange look in his eyes. He took a deep breath and couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. Imitating Bufang, he tore the flatbread into pieces and threw them into the bowl. After the flatbread was soaked, he drank a mouthful of it. Oh! Xiao Chongyun's eyes widened in amazement. It was so damn delicious. This taste wasn't something that the fasting pill could compare to. For a moment, the crowd started to clamor. It seemed like it was really delicious. Even the Wind and Thunder pavilions, Xiao Chongyun ate it. Why didn't they try it? Perhaps it was really delicious? For a moment, the lamb soup in Bufang's pot was finished. As for the flatbread, they went to the trees and plucked it. As a result, the atmosphere on the island changed. It changed from a somber atmosphere to a strange one. Many Divine Realm experts held a bowl of meat soup in their left hand and a white flatbread in their right hand. They squatted on the ground and ate happily. Rumble, a figure covered in a tattered blood-colored robe, slowly crawled out of a deep pit in the magma. Behind him, numerous stone monsters made of magma also crawled out of the pit. Misha's gaze was somewhat complicated. The blood in his body was hurting and controlling his actions. He was being controlled by the Bloody Man. It was too easy for the Bloody Man, who possessed the Shura Tower, to control an expert from the ancient Shura city. Let's kill, Misha muttered. However, He was actually rejecting the idea in his heart. It was just that he couldn't control his killing intent. He walked out of the crater. He sensed something in his heart and rushed toward a certain direction. His body emitted a surging aura as he stood proudly in the sky. Looking at the many experts below him, Misha's monstrous killing intent froze. His expression stiffened. What were these people doing? Chapter 461. When Misha saw the scene in front of him, he was completely stupefied. These people were all Divine Realm experts, but what were they doing? Each of them had a bowl of soup and a piece of flatbread. They found a place to squat down and happily ate. What about their image? What about the image of Divine Realm experts? They were even eating noisily. Could they be any more shameless? Misha was somewhat speechless. He floated in the sky with the 3 chains swaying behind him. The will of the man covered in blood was still in his body, causing his killing intent to surge violently. These people must die. His killing intent affected his mind, and it condensed in his eyes. It seemed as though it had materialized, causing people to feel a chill run down their spines. Nangong Xuanhe didn't eat. Even if he wanted to eat, he didn't have the face to do so. The conflict between him and Bufang was huge, and he even wanted to kill him. How could he put down his face and eat that bowl of mutton? The fragrance of the meat soup was rich, and it constantly tempted his appetite. The people around him were all squatting down and eating, and he was the only one standing there. To be honest, he felt somewhat awkward. When he saw Misha, his eyes lit up, and the wrinkles on his face wrinkled. He seemed extremely excited. "Your Excellency Misha, I finally found you." He didn't seem to notice Misha's depressed state, and he ran over to him. He finally found an acquaintance. Misha looked at him indifferently, and when he saw him running over, he couldn't help but squint his eyes. Was he retarded? He came here to kill people, not to chat with him. Bang! Misha thrust out his palm, and the chains in the sky collided with each other. His true energy surged and turned into a giant blood-red palm that shot toward Nangong Xuanhe. As Nangong Xuanhe ran, the excited expression on his face disappeared. "You actually want to kill me?" When he felt the terrifying might of that palm, Nangong Xuanhe's expression changed, and he roared. He forcefully stopped his body and moved sideways in an attempt to dodge that attack. Poochie! However, Nangong Xuanhe's reaction was too slow, or perhaps it was better to say that Misha's attack was too fast. Although Nangong Xuanhe managed to dodge in time, half of his body was still smashed by the blood-red palm. He coughed up blood incessantly. A bloody mist spread out, drawing an arc in the air before finally falling into the distance like a pile of rotten flesh. Misha's eyes were filled with killing intent as he coldly swept his gaze over everyone present. He was really here to kill. Boom, boom, boom. Giant beasts made of magma crawled out from behind him. These giant beasts were quite large in size and had very strong combat power. Each of the stone beasts seemed to be on par with an ordinary God State expert. Rumble! The Divine Realm experts below instantly felt a chill down their spines. They quickly poured the mutton soup into their mouths and wiped it clean before standing up solemnly. Bufang put away the black turtle constellation walk and looked at it with a solemn expression. That person had a murderous aura, a very cold murderous aura. Clearly, they did not come with good intentions. Ancient Shura cities Misha, what are you doing? You actually colluded with the monsters on the island to besiege us? The Grand Baron Sex Yi Cheng coldly said as he took out a stone sword that was strapped on his back. Although the stone sword had no sharp edge, it gave off an extremely dangerous aura. He was the Grand Baron Sex Yi Cheng, one of the 10 supreme sons of heaven. The puppet sex experts looked at Misha with a solemn expression. They took out the bronze chests on their backs and, with a rumbling sound, a pitch-black aura spread out. 2 figures shot out of the chests, emitting deafening roars that resembled those of wild beasts. They were the puppet sex puppets. They were corpse puppets refined from the corpses of divine realm experts. These corpse puppets were extremely ugly, and it was impossible to see how they looked like when they were alive. Their mouths were filled with fangs and they breathed a pitch-black aura. Swoosh! Swoosh! The violent corpse puppets tore through the air and charged toward Misha. The corpse puppets were violent and filled with a murderous intent. Misha sneered as he stood proudly in the air. The tip of his foot touched the ground and his body disappeared like a phantom. In the next instant, he appeared in front of a corpse puppet. Bang! With a punch, the stiff corpse puppet was sent flying and smashed into a small hill. The ferocious Misha was like a ferocious beast in human form. Every move he made was incomparably ferocious and unstoppable. He was an expert who had broken through 3 Supreme Being shackles. None of the Divine Realm experts present were a match for him. Even Xiao Chongyun and the others from the Wind and Thunder Pavilion couldn't defeat him. The gigantic stone beasts charged into the crowd and started killing wantonly. The appearance of Misha and those monsters was extremely sudden. Even now, some people were still in a daze. They didn't expect that they, who had come here for a fortuitous encounter, would encounter such a great calamity. At the same time, Bufong was dodging at high speed. He looked around with a solemn expression. This time, he didn't take out the black turtle constellation wok. Instead, he carried a golden kitchen knife in his hand. He held the golden dragon bone kitchen knife in his hand. A gigantic beast locked onto him and charged toward him. Bufong didn't ask Xiao Bai and Xiaopi to help him. He carried the kitchen knife and charged toward the beast. He wanted to use this opportunity to temper himself. The Overlord 13 Blades. The battle became extremely intense. Finally, a Divine Realm expert was killed. His body was torn apart by a gigantic stone beast. Boiling hot blood splattered all over the ground, but it was quietly absorbed by the ground of course. There were also some stone beasts that were crushed by the Divine Realm experts and turned into rubble. However, there were too many of them. Even if one was crushed, another would appear. Everyone was instantly plunged into a desperate situation. No one would have thought that the originally gentle and safe Delicacy Island would turn into a Shura hell in an instant. Everyone was in a desperate situation. One after another, Divine Realm experts fell. Their blood was absorbed, but no one knew where it went. Some experts were terrified because they also noticed the abnormality. Their faces were filled with terror and they roared. They didn't want to die. Some people started to run away from the island. If they had to choose between a fortuitous encounter and their lives, they wouldn't hesitate to choose their lives. After all, without their lives, any fortuitous encounter was just empty talk. Running away? Misha sneered. True energy gathered in his hand and formed a blood-red spear. One end of the spear was extremely sharp. With a ripping sound, the spear was thrown out by him. It was so fast that even the air was torn apart. There was a puff sound. A Divine Realm expert screamed as the spear pierced through him. His body exploded in the air and turned into a mist of blood. The mist of blood didn't scatter. Instead, it was pulled by an invisible force and gathered on the island. Some people went crazy. There was a terrifying blood-sucking thing hiding under the island. No one knew what it was. However, the unknown was the most terrifying thing. The stone beasts roared and spat out sharp stones that were burning red from their mouth. Those stones flew into the air. They were so dense that they couldn't avoid them. One after another, the Divine Realm experts were smashed down. Rumble! Explosions resounded in the air, and a mist of blood filled the air. The dense stench of blood had practically enveloped the entire island. However, the stench of blood was quickly absorbed by the island like rivers flowing into the sea. There were many casualties. It was extremely tragic. In just a short while, most of the Divine Realm experts on the Gourmet Island were killed. Only a few elites were left. However, their appearances were also somewhat miserable, and they looked extremely miserable. It was the first time that the Grand Baron Sex Yi Qing was in such a sorry state. His whole body was bathed in blood, and his hand, which was holding the stone sword, was trembling. Xiao Chongyun wasn't as elegant as before. He was gasping for breath and his face was pale. Metal fragments were scattered all over the ground around the two puppet sex experts. These were the parts of their puppet. However, almost all of their puppets were destroyed in this battle, and only their corpse puppets were left. However, the corpse puppets were torn apart, and only half of their bodies were left. They might not be able to escape. This was a huge trap. It was a trap that targeted everyone. Xiao Chongyun and the others weren't fools. They understood that this was a trap set up by Misha. It was no wonder that the people from the ancient Shura city would rush to the heavenly mist city. It turned out that they had a sinister plot. This guy really deserved to die. Master Xian Bei's gaze was calm. Under his protection, Yang Meiji was safe. After all, this old man was a Three Clouds alchemist, which was equivalent to an expert who had broken through 3 of the Supreme Being's shackles. Bu Fong raised the golden dragon bone kitchen knife and swung it down, directly chopping off the head of a stone beast. The huge head tumbled down, and the magma erupted, steaming hot. The corners of Bu Fong's mouth curled upwards. The wind blew against his hair, causing it to flutter. The Overlord 13 blades. Bu Fong finally grasped the Overlord's power, and he could use it once. Although it was just a single blade, its might wasn't any weaker than a Divine Realm expert's attack. Moreover, this blade had a terrifying suppressive effect on spirit beasts. So many people are still alive. They all have to die, Misha said. His gaze became blood-red, and his killing intent surged out of him. Giant stone beasts surrounded everyone, and they glared menacingly at them. In front of these giant stone beasts, which were the size of small mountains, everyone seemed extremely small. Misha sneered, and his body seemed to transform into a blood-red shadow as he charged downwards. Master Xian Bei's white hair and beard fluttered in the wind. A loud explosion resounded. Misha's figure was sent flying backward. Master Xian Bei soared into the sky with his hands clasped behind his back. The 3 shackles behind him swayed, and his aura was like that of a dragon. This old man's cultivation was extremely high, and after he consumed a spirit pill, his strength became even stronger. In just a few moves, he managed to suppress Misha. Bu Fong glanced at the battle in the sky, and his gaze swept the surroundings. The entire Delicacy Island was in a complete mess, and it wasn't as peaceful as before. Many of the spirit trees that could produce delicious food were destroyed, and they were burned to ashes. The entire island was in ruins. Chapter 462. The ground of the island was continuously collapsing. Crushed rocks tumbled about and magma spread out from it, burning the trees to ashes. The small island was being destroyed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Bu Fong, who was carrying a golden kitchen knife on his shoulder, looked around with a grave expression on his face. His gaze swept through the surroundings. He was searching for the 10th grade spirit herb, the bone-metamorphosing dragon grass, before the island was destroyed. This island had the densest spiritual energy among all the islands. Bu Fong believed that the bone-metamorphosing dragon grass should be on this island. However, he didn't know where it was. Misha was being suppressed, and Master Xian Bei was swallowing elixirs. It was as though he had been injected with chicken blood, and his fighting prowess was extremely terrifying. This old man didn't reveal his true strength, but his sudden burst of fighting prowess left everyone dumbfounded. After all, he was a divine physique echelon expert who had broken through 3 of the Supreme Being's shackles. His body was incomparably powerful, and his blood and energy were surging. Even though he was old, he was still extremely valiant. Misha's face was swollen, and there were many wounds on his body. Blood was flowing out of the corners of his mouth, and his eyes were bloodshot. Master Xian Bei squinted his eyes as he looked at Misha. He stamped his foot on the ground, and his aura rose steadily. His blood and energy were like a dragon's as it roared. Roar! The gigantic stone beast seemed to have received some sort of instruction, and it launched an attack at the remaining people. It raised its palm and smashed down. It wanted to smash the remaining people into meat paste. However, the remaining people were extremely powerful, and they wouldn't die so easily. Bufang, who was carrying the golden dragon bone kitchen knife, emitted a tyrannical aura. Buzz Xiaobai finally moved. His purple eyes flickered, and the armor on his body started to shine. The metal wings on his back spread open, and the array cannon on his body started to emit a radiance. An intense explosion resounded, and a berserk wave of energy surged out. An incandescent array cannon smashed out with a loud bang, directly hitting the body of the stone behemoth. One of the beast's arms was smashed by the cannon. Bang! 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 Xiaobai, who had turned into a human-shaped cannon, stood in his original position, and his body continuously shot out energy cannons. He used brute force to smash the beast into pieces. The surrounding people sucked in a breath of cold air. This was especially true for the members of the puppet sect. This was the first time they seriously sized up this iron puppet. They didn't expect it to be so strong. Compared to their corpse puppets, these puppets seemed to be even stronger. The main thing was that this array cannon was too fierce. How can a puppet carry a formation cannon? Where would he get the energy needed to activate the formation? This is illogical. A puppet sex expert roared in disbelief. A strong gust of wind blew, and the giant beasts were smashed into pieces, turning into gravel that rolled all over the ground. After the initial shock, the others also regained their senses and unleashed their most powerful combat power. These people were the elites of the various first-rate forces. Although they weren't the strongest or the most talented monstrous geniuses, they weren't weak. Rumbling sounds resounded, and the entire island was smashed to the point of collapse. Molten lava spewed out of the pit. Misha was smashed into the sea by Master Xian Bei's palm strike, causing huge waves to rise. The battle seemed to have ended. Rumble. A beam of light suddenly shot out from the depths of the island. That beam of light soared into the sky and condensed into a blood-red pillar. The phantom of a blood-red pagoda appeared. Everyone's gaze fell on the blood-red pagoda. They couldn't help but become excited. That was the opportunity they were looking for. The blood-red pagoda seemed to be filled with boundless temptation, and everyone involuntarily took a step forward, rushing toward it. In just a short moment, everyone's figure disappeared. Bufang put away his golden dragon bone kitchen knife and sighed. The entire island was filled with flames and smoke, and it was impossible to find the bone metamorphosing dragon grass. Could it be that the bone metamorphosing dragon grass was in that so-called opportunity? Bufang furrowed his brows as he looked at the blood-red pagoda. However, for some unknown reason, when Bufang looked at the pagoda, he felt a sense of disgust. He didn't want to touch that pagoda. He took a deep breath, and his mouth was filled with the stench of a burning volcano. Although he didn't want to go, the entire island was in ruins. If he wanted to find the bone metamorphosing dragon grass, he would have to enter it. Therefore, Bufang took a step forward and followed behind Bufang. Xiaobai's eyes flickered as he followed behind Bufang. In the distance there was a huge fissure. That fissure was extremely peculiar. The surging magma was actually split into two halves by this fissure, and a passage was revealed in the middle. Everyone followed the passage and stepped into it. Within that fissure, there seemed to be a pair of greedy eyes quietly watching them. Among the huge waves, a pitch-black and ice-cold ancient ship was slowly moving forward. The ancient ship was surrounded by a sea fog, and it was difficult for people to see it clearly. "Big sister, please let me go. I'm a man with a family, and a forceful melon won't be sweet. If you force me like this, both of us won't be happy." Within the netherworld ship, Nangong Wook let out a miserable howl. He was pressed to the ground by a huge force, and he couldn't move at all. All he could do was move his mouth. A pair of slender and perfectly straight legs lay in front of him. Those legs were indeed beautiful, but Nangong Wook didn't have the slightest intention of appreciating them. The Netherworld woman stood there indifferently, and her pitch-black eyes gazed at him. Her gaze caused his hair to stand on end. Nangong Wook felt sullen, and he felt that this woman had gone too far. If she wanted to kill him, she should have done so. However, this woman just stared at him, and it was incomparably horrifying. Did she really think that she could get pregnant just by staring at him? The Netherworld woman didn't speak, and only Nangong Wook kept shouting. He didn't know why this woman had captured him. However, he knew that the cabin of the ship was filled with corpses. These corpses were extremely cold, and they were filled with a deathly aura. They definitely weren't anything good. Fine, you can do whatever you want. After shouting for a long time, Nangong Wook's voice became hoarse. In the end, he chose to give up, and he lay on the ground as if there was nothing left to live for. The Netherworld ship continued moving forward, and it floated endlessly in the secret realm. It was unknown where it was floating to. All of a sudden, the lips of the woman, who had been frozen in place, slightly trembled. The aura of the phoenix egg, she muttered. The woman muttered. Then, as if she had come back to life, she slowly walked around the cabin. In the end, under Nangong Wook's gaze, which was filled with despair, the woman lay on his face and licked him several times. Damn it. I have to take responsibility for you taking liberties with me, okay? Tears streamed down Nangong Wook's face. After licking Nangong Wook twice, wisps of black energy entered his body, and the woman stood up. The cabin's door opened and she slowly walked out. There was actually such a vast space beneath the island. Within that space there was a towering blood-red tower. This time, the giant tower wasn't just an illusion, it was the real blood-red tower. Bufang's gaze froze as he looked at the giant tower. He felt that this blood-red tower was somewhat familiar, and he felt as if he had seen it somewhere before. However, he couldn't recall where he had seen it before. The blood-red tower emitted a mysterious aura, and its surface was full of carvings, which reflected a blood-red radiance. It was so beautiful that it could intoxicate people. At least, besides Bufang, everyone else couldn't help but approach the blood-red tower. It was as if there was an invisible force that was attracting them all. It was really strange. Bufang's gaze froze. He looked ahead. Because Yang Meiji's cultivation was the weakest, she couldn't resist the attraction, and she couldn't help but walk toward the blood-red tower. That giant tower was like a demon that had opened its fangs, and it was about to swallow her. After all, Bufang and Yang Meiji were acquaintances, and he couldn't just watch her die like that, right? Bufang was a little conflicted. Eventually, his mind flickered, and the black turtle constellation Wok hovered in his hand. He was still too soft-hearted, true energy poured into the black turtle constellation Wok. Bufang grabbed the Wok with one hand and took a step back. Taking a deep breath, he threw the black turtle constellation Wok out. Go! The black turtle constellation Wok whistled as it spun and flew out. In the sky, it became bigger and bigger. In the end, it became like a small mountain, smashing toward the blood-red tower. Boom! The black turtle constellation Wok smashed on the giant tower, and a loud explosion resounded. The entire space seemed to shake. The boiling magma became more violent. Damn it! Whoever spoils my business, I'll kill him! A flustered and exasperated roar resounded. Then, a figure suddenly appeared on the blood-red tower. It was a figure shrouded in blood, and its aura was extremely terrifying. Its eyes were cold and manic, filled with murderous intent. The black turtle constellation Wok flew back to Bufang's hand. This Wok had wasted half of the true energy in Bufang's body. He hurriedly took out an oyster pancake from the system-dimensional bag to recover his true energy. After swallowing it in 2 or 3 mouthfuls, The emptiness in his body was somewhat satiated. Then, an explosion resounded. The radiance of the blood-red tower was somewhat obscured by the black turtle constellation Wa. Everyone, who was attracted by the formless energy, finally came back to their senses. Everyone's body was drenched in cold sweat, especially young Meiji. Especially young Meiji, this woman was only one step away from entering the magma. When she opened her eyes, she was so frightened that she almost peed her pants. She was a tomboy, yet she cried at the drop of a hat. Tears streamed down her face. It seemed like she was really frightened. The Three Clouds alchemist, Great Master Xianbei, released a wave of true energy and pulled Yang Meiji back to his side. The old man's eyes were also filled with fear. That was because even he had fallen for it, lost within that peculiar energy. If it wasn't for Bufang's attack, everyone would have died. This is the Shura Tower? The ancient Shura city's divine tool. The legendary divine tool that was shattered and scattered across the hidden dragon continent. Great Master Xianbei roared in shock. It was no wonder that the ancient Shura city's experts would appear in Heavenly Mist City. No one would have thought that the ancient Shura city's divine tool would be in the Cloud Sea secret realm. The man covered in blood flew around the Shura Tower, and his blood flowed unceasingly. His ice-cold eyes stared at Bufang, who was eating the oyster pancake. His killing intent surged out of him. I was so close to reviving the Shura Tower. The man covered in blood roared in frustration. It was precisely because of this that his killing intent toward Bufang became denser. If it wasn't for Bufang, everything would have gone according to his plan. With a sharp cry, the blood around him started to boil. It transformed into a blood-red python that pounced toward Bufang. Chapter 463. I'll kill this brat who ruined my plans first. An ant-like brat. This was the first thought that came to the man covered in blood. The blood energy in the sky converged and formed a roaring blood dragon. The dense smell of blood permeated the air, causing people who smelled it to feel nauseous. With a roar, the blood dragon surged and pounced toward Bufang. The hearts of the people in the surroundings jumped, and their bodies trembled. The might of the blood dragon was too terrifying. It seemed as though it wanted to devour people in an instant. It was simply unstoppable. Master Xianbei's eyes flickered and he roared. His aura rose steadily, and he threw a pill into his mouth. His entire body emitted surging true energy. He raised his palm, and the true energy in the sky converged into a revolving waterfall. The waterfall coiled around the blood dragon and tried to stop it from attacking Bufang. The man covered in blood stood on top of the blood-colored tower, and his gaze was filled with disdain and ridicule. He didn't care about Master Xianbei, who was trying to stop him. He raised his palm and aimed it at the blood dragon. It seemed as though he had recognized it, and the roaring blood dragon underwent a transformation. Sharp blood thorns burst out from the blood dragon's body, and the blood thorns directly tore apart the waterfall. Master Xianbei's eyes widened, and he felt a chill run down his spine. How could this blood dragon be so terrifying? Bufang furrowed his brows as he watched. The man covered in blood's killing intent locked onto him, and he felt somewhat uncomfortable. He looked at Master Xianbei, who was bitterly resisting the blood dragon's attack. Bufang let out a breath. He casually flipped his hand, and a bowl of steaming hot ramen appeared in his hand. The rampage ramen was very fragrant, but taking out a bowl of ramen at this time, wasn't it a little strange? Master, connect. Bufang waved the bowl of ramen in his hand, and the rampage ramen flew toward Master Xianbei at an incredible speed. Connect? What do you mean connect? Master Xianbei was somewhat bewildered. He didn't know what Bufang was talking about. When he saw Bufang throw something at him, he subconsciously caught it. As soon as it touched his hand, a strong fragrance gushed out. It was the fragrance of noodles. It's really noodles? Master Xianbei's bearded face trembled. What the hell is going on? You want me to eat noodles in the middle of a great battle? Do you think my old bones are dying too slowly? Master Xian Bei was somewhat speechless as he glanced at Bufang. He was about to throw the noodles away. Boom! He raised his palm, and his true energy surged like a clear spring falling from the heavens, causing a huge explosion. Master Xian Bei's face turned red, and he felt a wave of suffocation in his heart. He felt his hair stand on end. Just one blood dragon was already so difficult to deal with. If that bloody man were to personally make a move, wouldn't they all die? Whoosh! A bowl of rampage ramen floated back to Bufang's hand. Bufang's face darkened. Was he being despised? The rampage ramen that could increase one's combat strength was actually looked down upon. This was a little awkward. However, he did not care too much about it. He took out a vigor beef meatball from the system storage. He threw it to Master Xian Bei once more. Master Xian Bei angrily caught the vigor beef meatball. What is he doing? I'm fighting. Why does he keep throwing things at me? When the vigor beef meatball touched his hand, it felt warm. The heat emitted by the vigor beef meatball caused Master Xian Bei's somewhat angry heart to calm down. A meatball? Master Xian Bei's gaze flickered as he looked at Bufang. Bufang expressionlessly nodded his head seriously. Eating a bowl of noodles might take up a lot of time, but eating a meatball was much more convenient. Bufang stuffed the vigor beef meatball into his mouth and chewed it a few times. The taste was unexpectedly good and his eyes lit up. However, when the meatball entered his stomach, Master Xian Bei's heart started to thump violently. Waves of energy spread out from his abdomen and spread throughout his entire body. This was a kind of energy that caused his blood to boil. Rip! The muscles of Master Xian Bei's entire body bulged. His originally thin and weak body actually bulged up at this moment. His entire body was filled with muscles that resembled a horned dragon. Strength! This is what strength is. Master Xian Bei was pleasantly surprised. He felt as though his entire body was filled with an endless amount of energy. Roar! With a furious roar, the blood dragon broke free from the pillar of true energy and rushed toward Master Xian Bei. A loud explosion resounded as the blood dragon collided with Master Xian Bei. Everyone was watching the fight attentively, and in the next moment, they all sucked in a breath of cold air. They were dumbstruck. In the sky, Master Xian Bei's muscles bulged, and he emitted a tyrannical aura. He let out a long roar and tore the blood dragon into two halves. Blood rained down on Master Xian Bei's body. The unparalleled power he felt made him feel as though he was invincible. He was old but vigorous. Everyone was speechless. Even the man covered in blood squinted his eyes. He was somewhat surprised. Master Xian Bei was the one who was the most shocked. It was impossible for his physical strength to suddenly soar for no reason. Could it be because of that meatball? However, that was just a meatball and not an elixir. How could it have such an effect? It was simply inconceivable. Master Xian Bei was somewhat confused. However, this wasn't the time to think about it. He clenched his fists, and the energy contained within them seemed as though it was about to explode. Stepping in the air, Master Xian Bei's white beard and hair fluttered in the wind as he boldly charged toward the man covered in blood. He knew that the man covered in blood was the key. After the man covered in blood recovered from his initial shock, his eyes regained their usual coldness. He looked at Master Xian Bei, who was rushing toward him, and sneered. Trash. Since you are courting death, I will fulfill your wish. Swoosh. Swoosh. Master Xian Bei felt a gust of wind coming from his side. When he turned his head, he saw a blood dragon opening its mouth wide and charging toward him. He was instantly blasted to the ground by the blood dragon. 1, 2, 5 blood dragons hovered in the air. Their blood energy illuminated everyone's eyes, making them look bloodshot. The smell of blood and killing intent filled the air, and everyone's body stiffened. Pucci, Master Xianbei, was sent flying in a sorry state. He created a huge crater in the ground, and he didn't even have the strength to climb out of it. Your blood is my greatest joy. Don't be anxious. Come at me one by one. The man covered in blood said coldly. What kind of monster was he? The geniuses present all sucked in a breath of cold air. Master Xianbei was in existence in the divine physique echelon who had broken through 3 supreme being shackles, yet he was defeated so easily. The man covered in blood didn't even make a move. How strong was that man covered in blood? Did he break through 4 supreme being shackles? Or did he reach the limits of the divine physique echelon and break through 5 supreme being shackles? A terrifying killing intent filled the air, and everyone felt extremely stifled. Everyone present was a genius, and they were naturally unwilling to be suppressed like this. Roars resounded unceasingly, and their auras soared into the sky. They were struggling to break free from the terrifying pressure of the man covered in blood. The Grand Baron Sex Yi Qing held a stone sword in his hand. The originally blunt stone sword had become extremely sharp, and it seemed as though it could cut through the air. A beam of sword chi slashed down, blasting towards the bloody man in the sky. Die! The man covered in blood had an ice-cold gaze, and he didn't care about the sword energy. The sound of chains colliding resounded behind him, and numerous blood-colored chains swayed behind him. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It really was a total of 5 supreme being shackles. The peak of the divine physique echelon. 2 arms, 2 legs, and 1 Niwen palace. 5 supreme being shackles were broken, crack. With a loud bang, a monstrous blood-colored palm slammed down on Yi Qing. Yi Qing despaired. An existence that had broken through 5 supreme being shackles wasn't someone he could fight against. Pucci. Before the blood-colored palm pressed down, Yi Qing spat out a mouthful of blood. He couldn't hold on to his stone sword any longer, and he fell to the ground. Rumble! The blood-colored palm smashed down, and Yi Qing didn't even have time to scream before he was smashed into meat paste. One of the Grand Baron Sex 10 geniuses had fallen. Their hair stood on end. Looking at Yi Qing's miserable state, the crowd no longer had the will to fight back. Run! The puppet sex experts, the Wind and Thunder Pavilions Xiao Chongyun, the Heavenly Pill Cities experts, and the Heavenly Shine Cities experts all burst forth with their fastest speed, fleeing in all directions. An existence that had broken through 5 supreme being shackles had actually appeared in a secret realm. It was simply a nightmare. An expert at the peak of the divine physique echelon was the cornerstone of every first-rate faction. He was a true apex expert. They weren't fools. The moment their opponent's strength burst forth, they knew that it was time to escape. Although the opportunity was good, they still needed to be alive to obtain it. Escape? The man covered in blood sneered, and the coldness in his eyes intensified. Blood arrows whistled through the air, and they instantly pierced through the bodies of the geniuses. Xiao Chongyun let out a miserable howl. He wanted to resist, but he couldn't. He discovered that his abdomen had been pierced by a blood arrow, and his blood was flowing out rapidly. He was somewhat frightened. Mu Chunfeng was fleeing at full speed, but an arrow fell from the sky and nailed him to the ground. His white robe was stained with blood, and his aura was dispirited. How could they, who had broken through 1 or 2 shackles, be a match for an expert at the peak of the divine physique echelon? Although they didn't know whether the man covered in blood had reached the divine physique echelon perfection realm or not, just the fact that he had broken through 5 supreme being shackles was enough for him to instantly kill all of them. Miserable howls resounded unceasingly. Many experts were pierced by the blood arrows, and fresh blood gushed out of their bodies. Heavenly Pill Cities Mu Chunfeng died. Wind and Thunder Pavilions Xiao Chongyun died. The puppet sex 2 great experts were heavily injured. The entire space seemed to have turned into doomsday, and the aura of death pervaded the air. The man covered in blood stood proudly on the blood-red tower, and he couldn't help but narrow his eyes when he felt the blood energy flowing into his body. Yang Meiji was in a sorry state as she dragged Master Xian Bei out of the deep pit. When she saw Master Xian Bei's miserable state, she sucked in a breath of cold air, and her whole body trembled. Master Xian Bei's bones were all twisted, and his aura was extremely dispirited. It seemed as though he had aged a lot in an instant, and his vitality was almost non-existent. The man covered in blood's gaze fell on Yang Meiji and Master Xian Bei. He casually flicked his finger, and an arrow of blood whistled out. Yang Meiji felt that it was difficult for her to breathe. That pressure was too terrifying. She was just a half-step divine realm expert, so how could she withstand the attack of a peak divine physique echelon expert? "I'm going to die," Yang Meiji despaired. Just as the blood arrow was about to pierce through the two of them, a loud bang rang out. A spinning black wok appeared in front of her. When the arrow of blood collided with the black wok, a loud explosion resounded, and the black wok was sent flying dozens of meters away. When it landed on the ground, a cracking sound echoed out. Bufang gasped for breath, and his eyes widened. Strong. Too strong. That man covered in blood was too terrifying. The man covered in blood narrowed his eyes. He still hadn't settled the debt with this ant, yet this fellow didn't run away. Instead, he dared to jump out of his hiding place? In that case, he should just die. Just when the man covered in blood was about to kill Bufang, his mind suddenly moved. He looked into the distance. There, monstrous waves swept over, and the collision of seawater and magma gave rise to surging heat waves. An ice-cold, pitch-black ancient ship slowly sailed out of it. A graceful figure stood proudly in front of the ancient ship, and her long hair fluttered in the wind. Chapter 464. Torrential waves surged in from the crack, causing the entire space to violently tremble. Seawater poured into the magma, and as the two mixed together, a sizzling sound could be heard. Waves of heat rose up and spread out in all directions. An ancient ship rode the wind and broke through the waves, brazenly opening the crack and charging in a flashy manner. At the front of the ancient ship was a graceful woman with long black hair. Her ice-cold face was expressionless, and it was so pale that it seemed a little sickly. Did the man covered in blood recognize the Netherworld ship? Of course he recognized it. When he saw the cold Netherworld woman, the hair on the man covered in blood stood on end. Netherworld woman? We don't interfere with each other's business. Why did you barge into my territory? The man covered in blood retracted his aura as he spoke with vigilance. He had indeed broken through 5 of the Supreme Being's shackles and was in existence at the peak of the divine physique echelon. However, when facing the Netherworld woman, he still didn't dare to be careless. This woman was extremely terrifying. When he appeared in the secret realm, this woman was already in existence that caused people to tremble in fear. Bufang retrieved the black turtle constellation wok and looked at the Netherworld woman and the Netherworld ship in astonishment. They met again. In the secret realm, he once again met this mysterious pitch-black ancient ship. There was also this mysterious woman, a woman who was acquainted with the Lord Go. What was the purpose of this woman coming here? Could it be that she was also here for the blood-colored Shura Tower? The Netherworld woman stood proudly on the pitch-black ancient ship. The hot wind blew against her long black hair, causing it to flutter unceasingly. However, this woman's attention wasn't on the man covered in blood, nor was it on Bufang. She looked straight at the blood-colored tower. The tower was shrouded in a layer of blood fog, and its radiance was hazy. Suddenly, the woman let out a sharp cry, and a formless sound wave came out of her mouth, dispersing the blood fog outside of the blood-colored tower. Buzz! In an instant, a fiery red radiance surged out of the Shura Tower. There seemed to be something suppressed at the bottom of the tower. Bufang's pupils constricted, and his gaze pierced through the blood-colored tower. He saw an egg. There were mysterious fluctuations and energy fluctuations spreading out from it. Egg? There's an egg under the pagoda? However, Bufang's eyes quickly narrowed as his breathing became a little hurried. He discovered that there were 3 stalks of green grass growing around the egg. The grass emitted a hazy radiance, and its appearance was rather peculiar. It was like a winding dragon, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws as it roared into the heavens. This was the bone-metamorphosing dragon grass. He had searched far and wide for the bone-metamorphosing dragon grass, but in the end, he had found it in such a strange way. This bone-metamorphosing dragon grass was the key to Bufang's mission. The phoenix egg belongs to me. The netherworld woman glanced at the phoenix egg before her ice-cold gaze fell on the man covered in blood. Her goal was the phoenix egg. It was a phoenix egg that could allow her to improve her cultivation further, allowing her to take that final step. The blood man's pupils constricted, and he emitted a cold intent. This netherworld woman's target was actually the phoenix egg? This was a little difficult. If he wanted to completely awaken the Shura Tower, he would need a sufficient amount of fresh blood to raise his cultivation to the point where he could bear the weight of the Shura Tower. He would also need the Shura Tower to absorb a sufficient amount of the phoenix egg's essence. The reason why the Gourmet Island was called the Gourmet Island was because it was nourished by the phoenix egg's essence. That was why there were so many strange-looking spirit trees and spirit herbs growing on the island. It was also because of the phoenix egg that the island had the densest spiritual energy in the entire Cloud Sea secret realm. Previously, the reason why the netherworld woman wasn't attracted was because he was trying his best to conceal it, and the Shura Tower was continuously absorbing the phoenix egg's aura. But now, because of the intrusion of these ants, the phoenix egg's aura leaked out, and it actually attracted the netherworld ship and the netherworld woman. This really gave him a headache. The blood man took a deep breath, and his gaze gradually became ice-cold as he looked at the netherworld woman. He definitely couldn't give her the phoenix egg, as it was the key to awakening the Shura Tower. Without the phoenix egg's essence, his cultivation wasn't enough to awaken the ancient Shura city's divine tool. Bufang picked up the black turtle constellation walk as he gasped for breath. His gaze drifted toward the Shura Tower. The Shura Tower's blood-red walls were transparent, and there was an egg that was emitting a brilliant light. That egg was roughly as tall as a human, and it was filled with fiery red veined patterns. The bone-metamorphosing dragon grass was floating around the egg. Bufang licked his lips, and his eyes lit up. That was a phoenix egg. It was an unimaginably good ingredient. The higher the grade of the ingredient, the better the taste. The phoenix egg's grade was definitely very high, and its taste would definitely be wonderful. If he could taste such a delicacy, just thinking about it caused him to feel excited. Take this old man and leave this place first. While the blood man and the netherworld woman were confronting each other, Bufang said to Yang Meiji, who had just escaped from death. At this moment, Yang Meiji was crying her eyes out. She took out elixirs from her spatial spirit tool and stuffed them into Master Xianbei's mouth. She had such a huge body, but she was crying like a little girl, and this caused Bufang to feel a little strange. "What about you?" Yang Meiji asked as she sobbed. "I still have some matters to take care of. This place is too dangerous, so you should leave quickly." Bufang furrowed his brows as he said indifferently. Yang Meiji was at a loss for words. She actually wanted to ask Bufang to leave with her, but the latter's undeniable expression made it difficult for her to open her mouth. Master Xianbei's life was saved, but his injuries were very serious. He had to be treated immediately, and it was impossible for him to do so in this place. "Let's go," Bufang said once more. After he finished speaking, he no longer paid attention to her. If they didn't leave now while the blood man wasn't paying attention to them, when would they leave? Bufang wanted to complete his mission, and he also had some improper thoughts about the phoenix egg. That was why he couldn't leave. However, Yang Meiji was different. She clenched her teeth and carried Master Xian Bei on her back. She started running away. She had no choice but to run away. The gaze of the blood man who had broken through 5 Supreme Being shackles fell on her body, and she felt a chill run down her spine. The blood man raised his palm, and blood energy gathered in it. It transformed into a blood-colored spear, and it shot out with incomparable sharpness. It shot out toward Yang Meiji. It wanted to pierce through both her and Master Xian Bei at the same time. Bufang furrowed his brows and took out a bowl of steaming hot ramen. He finished it in 2 mouthfuls and stuffed a vigorous beef meatball into his mouth. Bang! When Bufang ate 2 functional dishes at the same time, he felt as though his body was about to be torn apart. His true energy surged crazily, and he felt as though he was about to explode. When he held the golden dragon bone kitchen knife in his hand, he poured his true energy into it. In an instant, the knife became resplendent, and a dragon roar resounded. The phantom of a golden divine dragon spiraled out of the golden dragon bone kitchen knife, and it floated behind Bufang. Bufang held the kitchen knife with one hand, and his aura burst forth without restraint. He rotated the knife and slashed out. The golden blade energy accompanied the dragon's roar as it slashed toward the blood spear. Overlord 13 blades. In an instant, Xiao Bai's eyes turned white, and a radiance burst forth from his body. The array was awakened, and a pair of metal wings spread open as he soared into the sky. Xiaopi also became enormous, and Xiao Bai stood on Xiaopi's back. The 2 of them charged toward the man covered in blood. Bang! The blood spear exploded in the air. Bufang's all-out attack had finally managed to block the blood man's casual attack. Yang Meiji's heart jumped and she exhaled. She carried the old man and rushed out of the crevice. The man covered in blood turned his gaze toward Bufang. This kid had ruined his plans again and again, and if he didn't kill him, he wouldn't be able to vent his anger. He raised his head, and he saw a prawn carrying a lump of iron puppet rushing toward him. Bang! 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 The iron puppet's body shone with radiance, and many magic array cannons shot out. The speed of those cannons was extremely fast, and they were enveloped in a layer of golden radiance. The man covered in blood squinted his eyes, and he turned his head to look at those magic array cannons. Bang! The cannons exploded a few meters away from the man covered in blood, and it seemed as though they were blocked by an invisible force. It seemed like the walls of the blood-colored tower had blocked the man covered in blood. Xiao Bai froze for a moment. Bang! 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 He fired several cannons, but they all exploded in the air, and he couldn't get close to the man covered in blood. Even I can't get out of the Shura Tower's isolation, and a lump of iron wants to break in? The man covered in blood laughed hoarsely. He raised his hands. In an instant, blood energy filled the air, and it turned into 2 towering blood-colored palms. Bang! It was as though he was swatting mosquitoes, and both Xiao Bai and Xiaopi were hit. They were ruthlessly pressed against the ground. They couldn't move at all. The Netherworld woman stood there indifferently, and it seemed as though she didn't have any desire to attack. Her gaze was fixed on the phoenix egg. Bufang licked his lips when he saw Xiao Bai and Xiaopi being suppressed. Although they were suppressed, their lives weren't in danger. In the next instant, Bufang raised his kitchen knife and dashed toward the phoenix egg. His speed was extremely fast, and it seemed as though he was creating a huge wave. Bufang didn't know that he could actually run so fast. When the man covered in blood saw Bufang running toward the phoenix egg, he was infuriated, and the blood energy in the air started boiling. Numerous blood-colored spears gathered together, and they whistled toward Bufang. The Netherworld woman also let out a sharp cry. Her long black hair fluttered in the wind. She stepped on the deck of the ship with her sparkling feet, and she flew out like a fairy scattering flowers. Her speed became even faster as she chased after Bufang. Bang! 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 One after another, the long spears smashed into the ground, shattering it into pieces. Bufang quickly dodged the rain of spears. His mental energy was revolved to the extreme, and it seemed as though it was about to combust. A piercing pain came from his head. His body moved like a ghost, and he dodged left and right. If he missed by even a millimeter, he would be mercilessly pierced by the blood spears. "Stop right there!" The man covered in blood was infuriated. His body, which had been motionless all this while, soared into the sky, and with a bang, he smashed into the invisible wall of the tower. The wall bound him, and he couldn't leave. Bufang didn't care about the man covered in blood. He quickly arrived in front of the phoenix egg. An ice-cold aura pervaded the air, and the netherworld woman suddenly appeared beside him. She looked at him with her pitch-black eyes. The man covered in blood let out an angry roar, and the entire space trembled. He quickly left the top of the tower and rushed toward the bottom. The netherworld woman glanced at Bufang, then raised her jade-like finger and touched the wall of the tower. Specks of light immediately spread out. The Shura Tower's wall was suppressing the phoenix egg. Bufang suddenly realized that with the Shura Tower's barrier, how was he going to enter? Then, he saw the netherworld woman stretch out her hand, and her whole hand slowly entered the tower. Soon after, her whole body. It was so easy? Bufang expressionlessly looked at her, and a thought flashed through his mind. He also tried to enter the tower. It was as if he had touched a layer of warm water. The water covered his body, and Bufang directly passed through the Shura Tower. When he slowly opened his eyes, the dense spiritual energy in the air made Bufang feel as if his pores were about to burst. It was too dense. The spiritual energy in the tower was too dense. Bufang turned around and patted the Shura Tower. However, he touched a solid object. Once he entered, he wouldn't be able to leave. Bang! A dense smell of blood pervaded the air. A figure descended from the top of the tower, and a monstrous killing intent swept out. The terrifying pressure of heaven and earth caused the surroundings to tremble. The man covered in blood finally appeared. "There is a path to heaven, but you refuse to take it. There is no door to hell. You are courting death. Then go to hell." The man covered in blood had enough of this annoying ant. It was time for him to die. Roar! Countless drops of blood converged and formed a giant palm that covered the sky. It smashed toward Bufang, and it was unstoppable. The netherworld woman glanced at Bufang and turned around without the slightest hesitation. She didn't choose to save Bufang. Bufang's life and death had nothing to do with her. In an instant, the feeling of death enveloped Bufang's heart. He couldn't block it. He really couldn't block this palm. Bufang's heart trembled. His strength was too weak. Was he going to die? The blood-red palm became bigger and bigger in Bufang's eyes. In the end, it filled his eyes. However, within the blood-red sky, there seemed to be a white light floating out. Then, a pitch-black dog paw stretched out and swatted at the blood-red palm. Chapter 465. The blood-red palm soared through the air, accompanied by the rumbling of a stormy sea. The palm, which blotted out the sky, ruthlessly swatted at Bufang. The air around it emitted an oppressive wail. The netherworld woman quickly dodged the attack and stood in the distance. She coldly looked at Bufang, who was like a small boat in front of the blood-red palm. With Bufang's cultivation, he wouldn't be able to block this palm. He would surely die. However, just when she thought that Bufang would surely die, brightly colored specks of light suddenly appeared above Bufang's head. Those specks of light were densely packed, and they scattered in all directions like a group of fireflies. The speck of light turned into a thread, from which a crack could be seen slowly emerging. The sound of something being torn apart could be heard as the crack split apart. A furry dog's paw quietly stretched out from it. The blood-red palm had already reached its pinnacle, and it blew at Bufang's hair, causing it to flutter. The dense smell of blood almost stained Bufang's body. The man covered in blood was confident because he knew that if nothing unexpected happened, his palm would surely kill this kid. The Netherworld woman was clearly aware of the man covered in blood's cultivation. He was at the peak of the divine physique echelon, who had broken through 5 supreme being shackles. Although he hadn't reached the great circle of the spiritual divine protection realm, killing a supreme being like Bufang, who hadn't even broken through the shackles, was as easy as blowing off dust for him. He would surely die. She was now thinking of waiting for this kid to die so that she could retrieve the crystal source purple essence. That thing was extremely important to her. Previously it was because of that dog. Now that the dog wasn't here, she naturally wouldn't let go of the crystal source purple essence. However, she was quickly astonished by what she saw. The exquisite dog's paw that stretched out from the crack wasn't big. It was furry and incomparably small. However, the Netherworld woman got goosebumps all over her body when she saw such a small and delicate dog paw. Bufang widened his eyes as he looked at the dog's paw. He was somewhat delighted. It was Blackie. As expected, it was that lazy dog Blackie. Sure enough, it had arrived. The dog's paw was small, but its power was terrifying. The bloody palm that was slapping down suddenly seemed to be blocked by an invisible force, unable to suppress it in the slightest. The bloody man's eyes widened. He felt the pressure of heaven and earth. That pressure actually forcibly pushed aside his pressure. Buzz, an invisible ripple spread out, and in the next instant, the bloody palm was sent flying. It was smacked by the dog's paw and dissipated, turning into blood that filled the sky. The blood on the man's body began to boil. He retreated a few steps with a sinister expression as he looked down in disbelief. That kid is so strong? No. It was definitely not that kid. What was that thing? In this secret realm, could it be that there are existences at the peak of the divine physique echelon? Or could it be an existence above the divine body realm? The bloody aura gradually dissipated, revealing the scene below. The bloody man stared at him. The Netherworld woman was also watching in shock. The dog's paw was raised slightly, and it reached out from the tiny crack. It was this claw that caused the monstrous blood palm to shrink back. A dog's paw? The thing that repelled the palm of a peak divine body realm expert was actually such a small dog's paw? The bloody man's gaze became strange, and the corners of his mouth twitched. I finally made it in time, a somewhat lazy voice echoed out. The crack became bigger, and gradually, a figure gracefully walked out of it. That figure wasn't human. It was walking on all fours, and it was walking with graceful cat-like step. Wait, cat-like steps? Wasn't that a dog's paw? How could it be cat-like steps? The bloody man felt as if his brain couldn't process the situation properly. He squinted his eyes as he looked at the figure that was gradually becoming clearer. It was a dog. It was a black, fat dog. It was walking with cat-like steps, and its fat body was trembling. It was a dog. Could it be that the thing that blocked his attack was actually this dog? The Netherworld woman looked at the Lord Go's figure, which was gradually becoming clearer, and her stiff face froze for a moment. It was extremely strange, because she realized that this dog seemed to be different from the dog she remembered. When she was in the Netherworld, she had seen that dog once. That dog wasn't this fat? The Lord Go shook its body, and its fat body trembled. The corners of Bufang's mouth curled up, and the true energy in his body quickly retreated. He felt a wave of weakness wash over him. He took out an oyster pancake and bit into it. As soon as the oyster pancake entered his stomach, it turned into true energy, and he gradually felt his strength returning. Bufang, you brat! The Lord Go told you to keep the crystal source purple essence. Did you keep it? It must have been difficult for you to snatch it from the Netherworld girl. Now that the Lord Go is here, let's hand it over to the Lord Go for safekeeping. The Lord Go stuck out his tongue as he stared at Bufang and spoke impatiently. Bufang's face was expressionless. He was wondering why this lazy dog would rush over so diligently. It turned out that it was for food. The Netherworld woman is still behind you. Is it really okay for you to say that? The Netherworld woman's face was ice cold at this moment. I didn't expect that you would have a helper. However, what can a dog do? The man covered in blood suppressed the shock in his heart. There was a divine realm prawn and a divine realm puppet, and now there was a divine realm dog. It wasn't strange at all. Since Bufang had so many helpers, it seemed like his status wasn't ordinary. However, no matter how extraordinary he was still in his territory. He was the one who controlled life and death. The man covered in blood said coldly, his voice filled with killing intent. The Lord Go was taken aback. He turned his head around and looked at the man covered in blood. Who was this person? He seemed really powerful. His whole body was covered in blood, and his aura was extremely powerful. The 5 blood-colored shackles behind him swayed, and his aura soared into the sky. Did he sever 5 shackles? It was no wonder that Bufang was in such a sorry state. Although he had some fighting prowess now, and he had the help of that iron lump, Xiao Bai, he was still far from being able to fight against someone at the peak of the divine physique echelon. Ever since I was sealed in the Shura Tower, I haven't eaten dog meat for a long time. This dog came at the right time. Let me savor the taste of dog meat. The man covered in blood sneered. He raised his hand, and blood gathered and formed a spear. Eat dog meat? Bufang was stunned. The Netherworld woman was also stunned. The fat on the Lord Go's face trembled. Did a dog provoke you? Why did you eat dog meat? The man covered in blood surged with true energy. He raised his spear, and the tip of the spear started to spin. It emitted terrifying fluctuations as it swept out. However, just as he was about to smash the spear, he was stunned. His target had disappeared. No, he didn't disappear. His target appeared less than a meter away from him. What was going on? The man covered in blood was stunned. In the next moment, he saw the plump dog raise its paw. As the dog raised its paw, it constantly expanded and turned into a gigantic palm that covered the sky. Bang! The spear was broken, and the man covered in blood was ruthlessly smashed into the bottom of the tower. The entire space trembled. Eat dog meat? You actually want to eat such a noble piece of meat? There are so many types of meat in the world, but you insist on eating dog meat? Tell me, are you courting death? The fat on the Lord Go's face trembled. The Netherworld woman pouted when she saw this. Fine, this coquettish style was indeed that dog's doing. It was just that. How did that slender dog of the past become so fat? Bufang rubbed his chin as he looked at the plump Lord Go. He smacked his lips. It seemed like the food in his store was too good. When he first met the Lord Go, he was still a handsome and slim dog. After seeing the Lord Go's paw, Bufang calmed down a lot. He grabbed the oyster pancake with one hand and slurped it down as he stood up and walked toward the phoenix egg. You guys can continue fighting. I want to take a look at the phoenix egg first. That damn dog. The man covered in blood soared into the sky, and his body soared into the sky. Countless drops of blood formed a sea of blood behind him. His eyes were bloodshot, and his killing intent soared to the sky as he glared at the plump black dog. Crunch! A crisp sound echoed as Bufang easily broke off the bone-metamorphosing dragon grass growing around the phoenix egg. The sound of the grass roots cracking was so clear in the silent space. The man covered in blood stiffened, and when he turned his head, he saw this scene. He immediately flew into a rage. He was so angry that he vomited blood. Chapter 466. The bone-metamorphosing dragon grass resembled a divine dragon that was about to soar into the sky. Its wriggling body was filled with a mystical aura. It was enveloped by a hazy radiance and emitted a fragrant aroma. With a cracking sound, the verdant bone-metamorphosing dragon grass was forcefully snapped by Bufang. It seemed as though a dragon roar resounded. Bufang weighed the spirit herb in his hand and the corners of his mouth curled up. as expected of a level 10 spirit herb. Just the smell of its rich essence and spiritual energy made one feel refreshed, as if one's mind had become much clearer. After storing the bone metamorphosing dragongrass into the system's dimensional storage, Bu Fang let out a sigh of relief. The system's temporary task was finally completed. He thought that it would be an easy task, but he didn't expect that it would be so difficult. Congratulations to the host for completing the temporary task. Enter the Cloud Sea Secret Realm and pick the Heaven-grade Buddha jumps over the wall soup ingredient, the bone metamorphosing dragongrass. The task reward will be issued after storing the bone metamorphosing dragongrass. The system's solemn voice resounded in Bu Fang's mind. Bu Fang was looking forward to the task reward. The 20% origin energy conversion reward would allow Bu Fang's cultivation to advance further. However, it wasn't strange. This task was extremely difficult, so it was natural for the reward to be generous. The man covered in blood looked at Bu Fang, who was leisurely snapping the bone metamorphosing dragongrass, and the blood in his eyes became even more intense. This ant-like human really infuriated him to death. At this moment, he was somewhat regretful. Why didn't he slap this fellow to death earlier? He didn't want him to keep jumping around in front of him and disgust him. The Netherworld woman was also speechless as she looked at Bu Fang. This weak human is really calm. The man covered in blood with 5 severed shackles wasn't dead yet he was already plundering the spoils of war? Couldn't he show some respect to someone at the peak of the divine physique echelon? The man covered in blood was extremely angry, and the blood in his body was boiling. Lord Go tilted his head as he looked at the man covered in blood and snorted. Lord Go was very clear about Bu Fang's temperament. That calm look of his would make anyone want to beat him up. However, Lord Go was already used to it. So, as long as Bu Fang wasn't eating sweet and sour ribs beside him, Lord Go wouldn't care much. As if sensing the bloody man's murderous gaze, Bu Fang calmly raised his head and looked at the bloody man who was about to spurt out blood. Then, Bu Fang did not pay too much attention to it. He broke off a new bone metamorphosing dragongrass with a cracking sound. The blood man was seething with anger. This was going too far. Bu Fang's infuriating look made the bloody man's anger surge unceasingly. His blood surged, turning into a vast sea that roared behind him. So much blood, it was simply shocking. Facing the monstrous sea of blood, Lord Go floated in the air. He was so small that he seemed like an unremarkable speck of dust. With a roar, the blood converged into a huge mouth that bit at Lord Go. It wanted to swallow Lord Go completely. Lord Go calmly looked at the sea of blood that seemed to engulf heaven and earth. Looking at the blood that was unceasingly approaching, the smell of blood spread out and filled the entire space. The bloody man crazily roared. His aura revolved to the extreme, and his true energy boiled to the extreme. Just as the sea of blood was about to swallow Lord Go, Blackie, who had been motionless, suddenly opened its mouth. The dog's mouth instantly enlarged, and it aimed at the encroaching sea of blood and barked loudly. It was incomparably loud and deafening. The sea of blood exploded with this dog's bark. Bang! 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 Huge waves rose in the sea of blood. Pillars of blood were smashed and continuously exploded. Then, the sea of blood swept back with a terrifying momentum. The bloody man was frightened. He didn't expect that plump dog to be so terrifying. A dog's bark made his sea of blood roll back. A buzzing sound rang out. Lord Go strode out with his enchanting cat-like step. In just a flash, he crossed the sea of blood and appeared in front of the bloody man. Lord Go didn't have a good impression of the bloody man. It was the first time they met, and this guy was already shouting that he wanted to eat dog meat. Did he want to eat dog meat in front of Lord Go? Wasn't he courting death? The dog's paw rose again. It suddenly expanded and pressed down, bringing with it a terrifying gust of wind. The bloody man howled. His hair fluttered, and his entire body's strength swept out. He wanted to block that palm. Bang! However, the illusionary void seemed to explode. The bloody man felt an unparalleled power pouring into his arms. That power was like a towering mountain pressing down on him. He couldn't resist it at all. Once again, he was smashed to the bottom of the tower. He was like a rubber ball that had been smacked away. Blackie wagged its tail in the illusionary void and continued to stride out with its enchanting cat-like steps. It was as if it was walking on an invisible flight of stairs. Bufang snapped the last bone metamorphosing dragon grass and stored it in the system's dimensional storage. He turned his head and looked at the bloody man who was lying at the bottom of the tower. He was like a pool of stagnant water. His eyes flashed. Then, his gaze once again fell on the phoenix egg, which was emitting a bright radiance. This egg was filled with rich essence. When Bufang approached it, he could feel the surging life force and spirit energy coming from it. Bufang's heart was filled with surprise and joy. This was the most awesome egg he had ever encountered. It was also the most awesome ingredient he had ever encountered. If this egg was used to make a delicacy, it would definitely be an excellent dish. Actually, using this egg as an ingredient for the heaven-grade Buddha jumps over the wall soup wasn't a bad idea. However, Bufang felt that it would be a waste. This was because other ingredients couldn't match up to this egg. It would be too wasteful. The phoenix egg belongs to me. Just when Bufang was pondering what kind of dish he should use this phoenix egg to make, an ice-cold voice suddenly rang out from behind him. It was the Netherworld woman's voice. Bufang had heard it before, so he had an impression of it. The woman looked at Bufang indifferently. It seemed like a wisp of killing intent was lingering around Bufang's body. As long as Bufang dared to take another step forward, he would be killed. Bufang furrowed his brows. This woman wanted the phoenix egg? What do you want the egg for? Bufang asked in a serious manner. The Netherworld woman looked at Bufang and remained silent for a moment. Then, she explained it out of respect for the Lord Go. The phoenix egg's essence can expel the deathly energy and curse from my body. Expel the deathly energy? Bufang was taken aback. He carefully looked at the woman and discovered that there were wisps of black energy flowing around her body. That should be the so-called deathly energy. So, if you obtain this egg, how will you deal with it? Do you know how to cook it? Bufang asked. The Netherworld woman was taken aback. How will I deal with it? What I need is the egg's essence. Why do I have to cook it? Can't I just lick it? That's what I've always done. Lick to absorb essence energy and suppress the deathly energy. It's such a simple thing, so why do I have to make it so complicated? When Bufang saw the bewildered look on the woman's face, he immediately became interested. I can tell with one look that you don't cook often. It's hard for you to experience the joy of delicious food by fighting and killing. Such a high-quality ingredient must be prepared with high-quality method. Only then will you be worthy of it. Do you know how many methods there are to prepare an egg? The Netherworld woman's face was ice-cold. She was dumbfounded. There are many ways to prepare an egg. The simplest way is to boil it. It retains the egg's original taste and essence. The creamy white will definitely make you feel intoxicated. When the topic of food came up, Bufang couldn't help but become more talkative. Aside from the simplest boiled egg, there are also poached eggs, tea eggs, braised eggs, and so on. Of course, there are even more advanced ways to prepare it, such as mixed cooking, egg fried rice, egg custard, and so on. Bufang listed out many ways to prepare eggs in a single breath, causing the Netherworld woman to become dumbfounded. Tell me, how do you plan to prepare it? Poached eggs? Or tea eggs? Bufang's eyes lit up as he stared at the Netherworld woman. I'll lick it. The Netherworld woman squeezed out these words after a long time. Bufang was taken aback. His face became expressionless as he squinted his eyes and looked at her. His gaze was filled with disdain. The Netherworld woman started to doubt her life. Lick it? Do you know how much essence, energy, and energy you will waste by doing this? If you give me the egg, I will definitely let you experience the pleasure of having your essence energy cleanse your body, Bufang said. The Netherworld woman remained expressionless. When Lord Go heard Bufang's words from afar, he almost laughed out loud. He didn't expect that Bufang would also learn how to swindle people. Only the Netherworld woman was pure and easy to swindle. Bang! The ground shook, and the entire Shura Tower started to shake. Blood energy gathered in the sky and poured into the body of the man covered in blood. At the bottom of the tower, the man covered in blood slowly crawled up. The aura emanating from his body was extremely terrifying, and there seemed to be traces of blood pulsing on his body. He recognized how powerful Lord Go was. The man covered in blood knew that he wasn't a match for this plump dog. He felt somewhat sullen. He had swept through the Cloud Sea's secret realm, but he never expected that he would be defeated by a dog. He wasn't willing to accept this. Fortunately, he still had a trump card up his sleeve. He wanted to turn this dog into a dead dog. He wanted to cut off the meat from its body piece by piece and tear it apart. The Shura Tower was awakened. Tens of thousands of drops of blood gathered in the center of the man covered in blood's palm, forming a scarlet drop of blood. That drop of blood was filled with tyrannical energy. The eyes of the man covered in blood were ice-cold and filled with killing intent. He coldly looked at the Lord Go and swept his gaze over Bufang. In the next instant, he ruthlessly pressed the scarlet drop of blood into the bottom of the tower. The sound of something shattering suddenly resounded. The drop of blood splashed out, and it looked like a pool of blood had split open, slowly spreading outwards. At the bottom of the tower, blood patterns started to flicker. Those patterns were extremely strange and mysterious. In just a short while, blood covered the entire floor and spread throughout the entire tower. The slightly transparent walls of the tower were filled with patterns, and it seemed as though the entire tower had awoken. It gave off a completely different kind of oppressive aura. The Shura Tower was the divine tool of the ancient Shura city. Since it could be called a divine tool, it naturally possessed a terrifying might. The man covered in blood let out a long howl. The translucent blood tower suddenly became solid. The walls of the tower became firm, and it gradually took on the appearance of a tower. The man covered in blood felt as though his mind was completely connected with the Shura Tower, and his mind became incomparably powerful. The feeling of controlling a divine tool was truly indescribable. Although this divine tool was broken, the man covered in blood believed that it was enough for him to slaughter the plump dog in front of him. Because of the Shura Tower's amplification, he felt as though he had entered the realm of spiritual divinity. He had truly reached the peak of the divine physique echelon. A dog wasn't worth mentioning. Chapter 467. The Shura Tower had been revived. After drinking an ocean of blood, the dilapidated Shura Tower finally regained some of its power. Although it was still broken, the pressure it emitted was incomparably powerful. The scarlet blood on the bloody man's body also gradually dissipated. Then, a blood-red face was revealed. The facial features on that face were constantly changing, as if it was formed by countless souls. At the opening of the crack, a drenched figure crawled in. It was the heavily injured Misha. Misha's eyes widened as he looked at the bloody man. This was the first time he saw the bloody man's face. Or rather, it was one of the faces that were constantly changing. That face wasn't unfamiliar to him. It could even be said that it left a deep impression on him. That face belonged to none other than Duan Ling, who had stolen a piece of the Shura Tower. Wasn't Duan Ling already dead? He died in the Grand Baron Sek's backward training ground. The ancient Shura city had already confirmed this news. However, the bloody man's face was Duan Ling's face. Buzz, 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 the bloody man was roaring. Although his face was constantly changing, his eyes didn't change. His gaze was still the same. The fat on the Lord Go's face twitched. He also felt that something was amiss. He clearly remembered that Duan Ling was smashed into pieces by his paw. He couldn't be more dead. Why did he appear in front of him again? Moreover, Duan Ling didn't seem to remember him. In the netherworld ship, Nangong Wuk finally crawled out of the cabin with great difficulty and climbed onto the deck. An unparalleled pressure pressed down on his body, making it extremely difficult for him to crawl forward. Nangong Wuk, who had just climbed onto the deck, saw the bloody man. At this moment, the bloody man seemed to have become the center of the world. Countless streams of energy gathered at his location. Although the bloody man's face was constantly changing, Nangong Wuk's pupils shrank. He was shocked beyond words. Not because of anything else, but because one of the faces was very familiar to him. "Father?" Nangong Wuk shouted in alarm. It was Nangong Wangtian's face. The face of the fallen Nangong Wangtian. Could it be that his father was still alive? Nangong Wuk thought in disbelief. However, his lively heart quickly turned cold. He discovered that the bloody man did not have any trace of Nangong Wangtian's aura. The feeling the bloody man gave him was that of a stranger, a very strange one. How could this be? Bufang seemed to have heard Nangong Wuk's roar. He stopped talking about the netherworld woman and turned his head to look in the direction of the netherworld ship. He immediately saw Nangong Wuk sprawled on the deck, his clothes in a disheveled state. Nangong Wuk? Bufang was surprised. The netherworld woman's pitch-black eyes turned and her gaze landed on Nangong Wuk. Her aura turned cold. "Go back," Nangong Wuk, who was struggling to crawl out, immediately felt a wave of energy acting on his body. He was pulled back into the cabin by this force. "Don't be like this. Let me take a breath of fresh air." When Nangong Wuk came back to his senses, his heart was filled with despair. His face was filled with despair as he stretched out his hand to grab the deck. However, the force was too strong, and it flung him back into the cabin. Bufang raised his brows in surprise and looked at the netherworld woman with a strange expression. What was this woman trying to do? Was she trying to imprison that clown, Nangong Wuk? Could it be that this woman had taken a fancy to Nangong Wuk and wanted to make him her husband? No. That shouldn't be the case. Perhaps this woman just didn't like Nangong Wuk. After all, that clown Nangong Wuk deserved a beating. Sometimes, Bufang even wanted to stamp the soles of his shoes on his face. Treat him well. He's a good man, Bufang said earnestly after thinking for a moment. The netherworld woman glanced at Bufang expressionlessly. However, Bufang still saw a trace of bewilderment in her eyes. "Shut up," the netherworld woman said coldly. Bufang felt as though the netherworld woman's pale face had turned slightly black. "Fine. Let's discuss how to eat the phoenix egg. Actually, making steamed meat with eggs isn't a bad choice. It's nutritious, healthy, and delicious." The corners of Bufang's mouth curled up as he spoke. Lord Go yawned as he looked at the bloody man, who had stood up once again and was absorbing boundless energy. To be more accurate, this person wasn't a human. With Lord Go's experience, he could tell with a single glance that there was something strange about this bloody man. This fellow was probably the appearance of the Shura Tower's tool spirit after it absorbed 2 soul essences. After Duan Ling was smashed to pieces, he was captured by a small black tower and turned into a remnant of his soul. That small black tower was probably the Shura Tower. Crack, the bloody scab condensed and the Shura Tower shot out rays of light that formed a flickering blood-red armor on the bloody man's body. The armor made the bloody man's tall and straight body even more conspicuous. "Bastard! Go to hell!" The bloody man glared at Bufang, and his aura soared into the sky. Spiritual energy rippled around him, and the 5 blood-red chains swayed and collided with each other. Swoosh! A blood-red ray of light flashed past. The armored bloody man appeared in front of Lord Go. He punched out. This punch contained the bloody man's formidable strength, and it seemed as though the air was being crushed. Did it become faster? Lord Dog rolled his eyes. He looked at the fist that whistled through the air, causing the fat on his face to tremble. He exclaimed in surprise. The bloody man coldly snorted, and his gaze was ice-cold as his killing intent soared. Bang! The fist smashed into the space where Lord Go was standing, and it exploded. Energy wreaked havoc in that space, causing the air to shatter. My punch missed. The bloody man felt that something was amiss. His body floated in the air, and his face kept changing. Sometimes it turned into Duan Ling's sinister face, and sometimes it turned into Nangong Wangtian's heroic face. Lord Go gracefully walked like a cat and appeared not far away. He calmly looked at the bloody man. The bloody man's speed was already extremely fast, reaching 3 times the speed of sound. His punch was even faster. However, Lord Go still managed to dodge it. After obtaining the Shura Tower's amplification, the bloody man became much stronger. The bloody man didn't believe that he couldn't deal with a dog today. He roared, and a series of sonic booms resounded in the air. Then, a bloody light shot out and smashed into the air. The air in the Shura Tower became extremely chaotic. The raging wind blew, blowing at Lord Go's unhurried body, and his fat wobbled. The bloody man attacked crazily, and Lord Go gracefully walked like a cat. However, the bloody man's punch was dodged every time. It was really strange. The bloody man's speed was fast, but Lord Go was even faster. His speed didn't match the fat dog's figure at all. Bang! All of a sudden, the direction in which the blood-red light was flying changed. It smashed into the bottom of the Shura Tower, causing the entire Shura Tower to shake. Lord Go raised his exquisite paw and rolled his eyes. Do you think I'm playing hide and seek with you? Don't you feel annoyed? As soon as he finished speaking, Lord Go raised his palm and smashed it towards the bloody man's position. Boom! The ground shook, and the Shura Tower let out a wail, as if it couldn't withstand the attack. It seemed like it was about to collapse. The bloody man crawled up from the ground once again. The armor on his body had been shattered into tiny pieces, and it seemed like it was about to shatter. Lord Go's 2 palms made him question his life. Poochie! The blood energy on the bloody man's body was rapidly dispersing and evaporating. Buzz! A buzzing sound could be heard. Bufang felt the Shura Tower tremble, and in the next instant it started to shrink. In the end, it turned into a small tower, which was held in the bloody man's palm. This dog was too terrifying. The bloody man was in despair. He could only place his hopes on the Shura Tower. He hoped that the divine tool Shura Tower could suppress this dog. Using all of his strength, the bloody man smashed the Shura Tower toward Lord Go's head. The Shura Tower rumbled, and its blood energy spread out. Its power was boundless, and the space seemed to distort. The power of this move had already surpassed the realm of the divine physique echelon. It was absolutely terrifying. The divine tool's power was really strong. Lord Go narrowed his eyes and his mouth twitched. Then, the fur on his body started to flutter. Divine tool? Even if it was a real divine tool, Lord Go wouldn't fear it, let alone a broken toy. I, Lord Go, have slept for so long. Did you think that I grew fat for nothing? I will let you see a small ability that Lord Go has recovered. Lord Go's gentle and magnetic voice reverberated. In the next instant, Lord Go's gaze changed. Bufang and the Netherworld woman raised their heads at the same time as they sensed something and looked at Lord Dog. At this moment, the Lord Go seemed to have turned into a pitch-black hole, and it was constantly absorbing light. A dog's bark, which seemed to have come from ancient times, echoed out. In the pitch-black darkness, a white crack appeared. That crack was located in between the Lord Go's eyebrows, and it looked like an eye had split open. Sizzle, when the color white reached its peak, darkness would appear. A beam of ice-cold black light suddenly shot out from the vertical eye that had split open. A loud tearing sound resounded, and it sounded like a bolt of lightning had struck out of the blue. Rumbling sounds echoed out. The speed of the black light was so fast that it was hard for people to see it. In an instant, it appeared above the Shura Tower that the man covered in blood had just thrown out. The divine tool Shura Tower trembled, and it seemed like it was trying to shoot out some energy. However, it was all in vain. The Shura Tower's energy exploded, and the black light smashed into the Shura Tower. The Shura Tower couldn't bear the heavy blow, and it was directly smashed into pieces. A cracking sound rang out, and the man covered in blood was dumbstruck. The Shura Tower exploded, and it turned into 3 fragments. This shit. The Shura Tower was originally formed by 2 fragments, so how did it get smashed into pieces? The man covered in blood was dumbstruck, and what frightened him even more was that the fluctuations of the black light were so powerful that they shook his body, and the blood armor covering his body exploded. His whole body turned into a mist of blood, and it scattered. 2 miserable howls resounded, and they turned into 2 remnant souls that soared into the sky. A sky-covering dog's paw suddenly appeared in the sky above the 2 soul essences. With a loud rumble, the 2 soul essences were collected, and they were thrown into the dog's mouth. Burp! The Lord Go smacked his lips and burped. His face was filled with disdain. Bufang's sweet and sour ribs is still the best. Chapter 468. 8. Ate it? Misha, who was at the exit of the crevice, widened his eyes in shock as he looked at the scene in front of him. He couldn't believe what he had just seen. It was as if he had just seen the most terrifying scene in the world. That incomparably valiant man who had broken through 5 of the Supreme Being's shackles and had even awakened the Shura Tower and reached the spiritual divine defense realm. He was killed by a dog with a single slap and swallowed alive. How could there be such a terrifying dog in this world? Where did this dog come from? The peak of the divine physique echelon. Even in the ancient Shura city, a person with such strength would be considered a peak expert. However, Misha felt as if he wasn't looking at a dog, but a demon wearing a dog's skin. The most important thing was the Shura Tower. The awakened Shura Tower was actually destroyed by this dog with a single slap. That was a divine tool. The divine tool that guarded the ancient Shura city. Although it was broken, its might was definitely not ordinary. Misha's entire body trembled. Without any hesitation, Misha turned around and crawled out of the crevice. He wanted to escape from this place. This world was too terrifying. Black licked its lips in the air and bared its fangs. With a groan, it landed on the ground. With a wave of its paw, the 3 fragments of the Shura Tower flew into its paw. The 3 fragments of the Shura Tower had already lost their luster, and one couldn't see the might of a divine tool at all. The Lord Go narrowed its eyes and threw the 3 fragments of the Shura Tower on the ground. Bufang was somewhat puzzled. What was this plump dog trying to do? Could it be that it wanted to eat the tower? Was it really that deranged? However, it was obvious that the Lord Go didn't want to eat the tower. Instead, it leaped up and used its paw to step on the Shura Tower on the ground. A series of rumbling sounds resounded. It was as if a huge force had ruthlessly smashed down on the Shura Tower, causing it to distort and deform. The Lord Go crazily stomped on the Shura Tower, and with every step, the fat on the Lord Go's body jiggled. Bufang was speechless. This dog is crazy. What kind of grudge does he have? Regardless of Little Black's funny behavior, Bufang turned to look at the phoenix egg. Without the Shura Tower's restriction, the phoenix egg shone with a dazzling radiance. Vigorous essence energy constantly gushed out from the phoenix egg, filling the entire space. The Netherworld woman took several steps forward and approached the phoenix egg. Her charming face was almost touching the egg's shell as she greedily breathed in. She was absorbing the essence energy flowing out of the phoenix egg. That essence energy allowed her spirit, energy, and spirit to recover by a large margin. The pitch-black death aura circulating around his body was suppressed. Bufang was also amazed. The essence energy overflowing from this phoenix egg was even denser than the blood crown of the black swamp boa. One must know that the blood crown was condensed from the essence of the black swamp boa. As expected of a phoenix egg, Bufang stretched out his hand and patted the eggshell. A warm feeling spread out from the eggshell and instantly spread to his whole body. It made Bufang feel as though his whole body had been cleansed. It was indeed an indescribable feeling. A phoenix egg. It was an extraordinary egg. It was definitely a good ingredient. Bufang became more and more excited. In the distance, the Lord Go also stopped moving around and walked with graceful cat-like step. In just a short while, he arrived beside Bufang. He waved his paw. A pitch-black object flew toward Bufang. Bufang, brat, this is the Shura Tower. It would be a waste to throw it away. The Lord Go reconstructed it for him. After all, it is a fragment of a divine artifact. You can wear it as a pendant. It was a pitch-black tower. It was small and exquisite, and it was only the size of a thumb. It was quite pocket-sized. This was the Shura Tower? Bufang was taken aback. How did the Shura Tower, which covered the entire sky, shrink into such a pocket-sized one? After receiving the Shura Tower, Bufang's brows twitched. The instant he received the Shura Tower, Bufang felt his mental energy surge. As his mental energy flowed through the Shura Tower, it became thicker. It was like a small stream flowing through it, but it became a small river. This little toy could actually increase one's mental energy? This was quite good for Bufang. After all, even though Bufang's cultivation was only at the Supreme Being level, his mental energy had definitely reached the level of a divine physique echelon expert who had broken through one of the Supreme Being's shackles. However, with his mental energy, cooking some dishes was still extremely strenuous. Not to mention the heaven-grade Buddha jumps over the wall soup. With so many precious ingredients, the amount of mental energy required to cook them would definitely be enormous. It was enough to suck Bufang dry. Hence, this small tower was a good choice for Bufang. Taking a velvet rope, Bufang threaded it through the pitch-black small tower. Then, he tied a dead knot at one end and hung it around his neck. Waves of clear energy surged out from the small tower. Not bad. The corners of Bufang's mouth curled up. Lord Go yawned, and the fat on his body trembled. He was feeling sleepy again. This should be an ordinary phoenix egg. It's not bad. Even though it's not a top-grade fire phoenix egg, it's still not bad. Even though its taste can't be compared to a fire phoenix egg, it's still a rare delicacy. Lord Go said lazily. Bufang was taken aback. Listening to this lazy dog's tone, it seemed as though this fellow had eaten a fire phoenix egg before. Could it be that this dog liked to go to other phoenixes' nests for no reason? Such a shameless thing. This lazy dog might really do it. Lord Go naturally didn't know what Bufang was thinking. He walked around the phoenix egg with a puzzled look in his eyes. Why would a phoenix egg appear in the hidden dragon continent? Could it be that it followed the Netherworld River to this secret realm? Lord Go muttered. At this moment, the Netherworld woman was lying on top of the phoenix egg. She stuck out her tongue and licked the phoenix egg. It seemed as though she wouldn't let go of the egg for the rest of her life. Bufang also didn't understand what was going on with this woman. This woman is the Netherworld woman, a woman who was exiled by the Netherworld. Sigh, she's also someone with a bitter life. Her body is constantly being invaded by the aura of death. If she doesn't have a source of essence to replenish her energy, she will suffer a torturous pain. Lord Dog looked at the Netherworld woman and sighed. Bufang, boy, do you see that ice-cold Netherworld ship? That woman doesn't have any spiritual essence, so she can't even walk out of the Netherworld ship. Although Hades isn't a good person, the power of his curse is really strong. Lord Go grinned. Was it really that miserable? Bufang raised his brows and looked at the woman with long, black hair. This woman didn't have an ugly appearance. In fact, it could even be said that she was extremely beautiful. However, her pale complexion made her look like a ghost. Moreover, her face was extremely thin, and she looked like a bag of bones. No matter how beautiful her face was, it would still look horrifying when she looked like a bag of bones. As he thought of this, Bufang furrowed his brows. He pondered for a moment, and black smoke revolved around his arm. The black turtle constellation walk appeared in front of him. He opened his mouth and spouted a mouthful of golden flames, which started burning fiercely within the wok. After pouring some oil into the wok, Bufang took out a bag of dragon blood rice from the system's dimensional storage. The scarlet dragon blood rice contained an extremely dense spiritual essence. It wasn't the real dragon blood rice, but one that was watered with the blood of a lesser dragon. After stir-frying it several times, Bufang used his mental energy to sense the changes in the dragon blood rice within the wok. Then, he took out a huge piece of wandering dragon meat, cut it into small pieces, and poured them into the wok. While stir-frying, Bufang took out a large piece of the blood crown, crushed it, and poured its essence into the wok. The netherworld woman hugged the phoenix egg, and her gaze fell on Bufang's black turtle constellation wok. Her nose slightly twitched, and her pitch-black eyes lit up. She lightly patted the black turtle constellation wok, and it immediately shook. The fragrant dragon blood rice flew out of the wok, and a blue and white porcelain plate appeared in her hand. She spun the dragon blood rice neatly in her hand. It was just a simple bowl of fried rice, but it was a bowl of fried rice that contained rich essence energy. After all, he had crushed the entire blood crown, and the spiritual essence contained within it was extremely terrifying. The netherworld woman looked at it curiously. Bufang gently tossed the dragon blood rice toward the netherworld woman. The latter quickly caught it and greedily sucked in a deep breath. The fragrance, spiritual essence, and spiritual energy of the dragon blood rice instantly rushed into her nose, and a trace of redness appeared on her pale face. The netherworld woman licked her lips with her scarlet tongue as she took a deep look at Bufang. Then, she left the phoenix egg and squatted down at the side. She used her slender fingers to grab a bowl of dragon blood rice and started eating it with big mouthfuls. "Blackie, can I take this egg?" Bufang asked as he stroked Blackie's spotlessly clean fur. "Sure, you can take it." The Lord Go rolled its eyes and replied with a smile. Bufang was taken aback. He shot a glance at the Lord Go and discovered that the corners of this plump dog's mouth were curled up, and the fats on his face were jiggling. Was there something strange? Bufang narrowed his eyes. Even though he knew that there was something strange, he couldn't do anything about it. This phoenix egg was too attractive, and it was especially attractive to a chef like him, who pursued the pinnacle of culinary arts. An excellent ingredient was more attractive than a peerless beauty. Bufang walked toward the egg, and touched it with his left hand, and patted it with his right hand. In the end, he placed his palms on the egg. After taking a deep breath, the true energy within the energy vortex in Bufang's dantian flowed out and spread throughout his limbs and bones. An enormous force was generated. Bufang hugged the phoenix egg and exerted his strength with a soft shout. The phoenix egg was extremely heavy, and Bufang felt as though he wasn't hugging an egg, but a mountain. Of course, for the sake of delicacies, even if it was a mountain, Bufang would still carry it away. Bufang took out a vigorous beef meatball and swallowed it. Immediately, his eyes burned with passion. Bufang's muscles bulged and he shouted angrily. The phoenix egg actually loosened a little, and it was pulled out by him. The netherworld woman, who was squatting in the distance, was taken aback. She stopped stuffing food into her mouth and looked at Bufang in astonishment. She didn't understand why this human would be so stupid as to pull out the egg. Could it be that he didn't know that the phoenix egg would appear here without any protection? Didn't he see that the man covered in blood only set up the Shura tower around the egg and absorbed its energy? He didn't touch the egg. The Lord Go was overjoyed as he looked at Bufang. As a dog that was used to plucking phoenix eggs, he naturally knew what the consequences of pulling out a phoenix egg was. As for Bufang, he quickly felt that something was wrong. He looked at the terrifying energy that was being emitted from the bottom of the egg. Bufang's eyes widened. He was flustered and exasperated. "You lazy dog! You actually tricked me?" Chapter 469. As soon as Bufang lifted the phoenix egg, a wave of terrifying suppressive energy spread out from the bottom of the egg. It was as if a ferocious beast that had been sleeping for a long time had suddenly awakened. Buzz, with a buzzing sound, the bottom of the phoenix egg lit up and energy gushed out. It seemed as if some mechanism had been activated, and the formation beneath the phoenix egg was activated. A pair of eyes with a violent aura emerged from the darkness beneath the egg. The ground shook violently, and a beast's roar reverberated in the distance. Bufang's eyes shrank as he looked at the beast's roar coming from the darkness below, as well as the figure that shot out like an arrow. The corners of his mouth twitched. In his mind, the Lord Go's solemn gaze reappeared. "Sure, you can take it. Take your sister." Bufang's face darkened. He suddenly let go of the phoenix egg. However, the shadow had already awakened. As the phoenix egg fell, it was enveloped by a wisp of black energy, and it slowly rose up. A huge figure gradually floated up from the huge array formation that was glowing with brilliance. It covered the sky, and it was incomparably huge. Bufang was dumbfounded as he stared at the colossus. What the hell? He had a pure heart, and he was admiring the phoenix egg. How could such a huge creature be lured out? Moreover, didn't that lazy dog say it was fine? Could he take the phoenix egg? As he recalled the Lord Go's solemn expression, the fat on his face trembled incessantly. Bufang felt a little foolish. Why did he believe that lazy dog's words? Crack, crack, crack. The phoenix egg was supported by a wisp of black energy, swaying in the air. Beneath the black energy was a huge, ferocious bird. However, this bird looked a little strange. It didn't have any flesh, and its entire body was made of white bones. Its bones glowed brilliantly, and it looked like the most exquisite work of art in the world. This is called a bone phoenix. It specialized in guarding phoenix eggs. The Lord Go laughed happily from afar, and he conveniently explained to Bufang. The bone phoenix's aura was extremely terrifying and oppressive. The black aura around its body rumbled, and was filled with the aura of death. The bird opened its beak wide, and let out a deafening roar like a beast. The bone wings spread open, and the bones on them were densely packed, looking rather sinister. The Netherworld woman smacked her lips as she ate the dragon blood rice. She held the porcelain plate and ran far away from the bone phoenix. The dragon blood rice was simply too delicious. The Netherworld woman was completely intoxicated by it. The bone phoenix was formed by the will of the phoenix's descendant. It was a method used to protect its descendant. Therefore, people with a bit of common sense wouldn't easily take away the phoenix egg. This was because doing so would cause one to be cursed and be pestered by the bone phoenix forever. In the distance, Lord Go opened his mouth wide and laughed, waving his paws. It seemed that he was somehow happy to see Bufang in such a sorry state. A rumbling sound rang out from afar. Then, Xiao Bai's body descended from the sky, blocking in front of Bufang. Bang! The bone phoenix flapped its wings, and a whistling black wind appeared. Its claws ruthlessly swiped downwards, and it seemed as though it wanted to tear the air apart. The illusionary void trembled. The armor on Xiao Bai's body flickered with radiance. He raised his palm leaf fan-like palm in an attempt to catch the bone phoenix. However, the bone phoenix's power was really too great. This bone phoenix's fighting prowess wasn't any weaker than the bloody man. Xiao Bai was caught and sent flying. With a flash of golden light, Shrimpy returned to its original form, lying on Bufang's shoulder once again. This little fellow stared at Bufang with its compound eyes. The Lord Go didn't expect that Xiao Bai would suddenly appear. This silly girl is still trying so hard to protect Bufang. The Lord Go curled up the corners of his mouth, and he looked at the brand new Xiao Bai with curiosity in his eyes. This iron lump was wearing armor, and its fighting prowess seemed to be much stronger than before. However, compared to the Bone Phoenix, there was still a gap. The Bone Phoenix roared, and the entire space trembled. This was the will of the Phoenix, and its power was incomparably formidable. The Lord Go wasn't worried about Bufang, because this Phoenix egg was just an ordinary Phoenix egg, and the will of the Phoenix protecting it wasn't that strong. If this Phoenix egg was the egg of a fire Phoenix, then even an existence above the divine physique echelon would be courting death if it came here. The might of a fire Phoenix was truly terrifying. The Lord Go looked at Bufang, who was holding a black wok and continuously smashing the Bone Phoenix. The Lord Go was quite satisfied to see the other party in such a difficult situation. He didn't wait for long, and he finally made his move. Striding forward with his enchanting cat-like steps, his figure instantly disappeared. A moment later, he appeared in front of the Bone Phoenix's giant head. The scarlet eyes of the Bone Phoenix locked on to the Lord Go, and it opened its mouth, which was full of sharp teeth, and fiercely bit down on the Lord Go. "There are only bones left, and I still want to eat you, the Lord Go?" Blackie lazily stretched out its exquisite paw. With a loud bang, the Bone Phoenix's bones were instantly shattered. Numerous cracks appeared on the white jade-like bones, and dense essence energy was emitted from those cracks. The Bone Phoenix was ruthlessly smashed into the ground, and a cloud of dust rose. Smoke and dust billowed. With an angry roar, the Bone Phoenix opened its mouth, and once again, it rushed toward the plump Lord Go in the air to bite him. The Lord Go rolled his eyes, and his figure freely fell. Crack! He sat on the Bone Phoenix's bones, and the Bone Phoenix instantly started to crumble. Finally, after a tremor, the smoke and dust dispersed, and the ground was filled with white bones. The Lord Go leisurely sat on the pile of white bones. His butt moved a little, and in the end, he climbed up from the pile of bones. He shook his body, and some bone fragments fell off. Then, he arrogantly raised his head, strode like a cat, and wagged his dog tail as he cheerfully ran down. Boom! The black energy that supported the Phoenix egg dispersed because of the Bone Phoenix's collapse. Without the black energy, the Phoenix egg instantly started to fall from the sky. Bufang's pupils shrank. How could he let the Phoenix egg fall like that? Although it was a Phoenix egg, no one could guarantee that it was harder than a rock. Thus, Bufang's true energy burst out from his feet, and his figure burst out, arriving below the Phoenix egg. He opened his arms, turned around, and turned his back to the Phoenix egg. The Phoenix egg whistled down, and its speed became faster and faster. Bufang's mind was extremely focused, and his eyes were wide open as he looked at the falling Phoenix egg. He jumped up high. One of his hands reached out, pressing on the shell of the falling Phoenix egg. A huge force spread out, causing Bufang to frown. The Lord Go stuck out his tongue, looking at Bufang with interest. Boom! A loud explosion rang out and the ground shook. Finally, he landed on the ground. Smoke and dust filled the air, obscuring everything. The wind blew, and the smoke and dust dispersed, revealing the scene inside. Bufang was carrying the giant Phoenix egg on his shoulder. His head was tilted, and his hands were supporting it. His face was red, and he was panting hard, his chest heaving up and down. At least, he was holding the Phoenix egg. His legs were half buried in the ground, and it was enough to show how much force Bufang had endured. The Phoenix egg was already very heavy, and falling from the sky, it was even heavier. The Lord Go also smiled playfully. This kid, Bufang, for the sake of eating, he really risked his life. He put the Phoenix egg into the system's dimensional storage. Bufang felt as though all the energy in his body had been sucked out, and his hands were shaking. Taking out an oyster pancake, he quickly stuffed it into his mouth. Only then did Bufang recover some of his energy. However, his fingers were still shaking. If he wanted to recover, he wouldn't be able to do it that fast. Xiao Bai scratched his round head, standing behind Bufang. His eyes had turned purple. Xiaopi, who was lying on Bufang's shoulder, rolled his eyes. Just now, this little fellow was almost crushed to death by the phoenix egg. Fortunately, it was hard enough, however, it was still not enough. Not bad, Bufang kid. You've improved. The Lord Go's gentle and magnetic voice rang out. Bufang looked at him, his face expressionless. His eyes were quite unkind. The fat on the Lord Go's face shook, and he said with an embarrassed smile, "If I said that I didn't know that there was something under the phoenix egg, would you believe me? What do you think?" Bufang asked calmly. "If I said that I forgot how to cook sweet and sour ribs, would you believe me?" The Lord Go was startled, and the fat on his body shook. His pupils contracted. "Don't. Great Lord Bu. Lord Go, didn't I help you smash this thing with 2 slaps? Let's talk about it properly." The Lord Go wagged his tail, and his sparkling eyes were bright and filled with sincerity. The Netherworld woman had already finished eating the dragon blood rice, and she stuck out her tongue to lick the blue and white porcelain plate. The entire plate was licked clean, and it seemed as though it had just been washed. In the end, when she couldn't taste anything, she swung her long black hair and walked toward Bufang. She passed the plate to Bufang and said earnestly, "Give me another portion." "I don't have any more," Bufang replied as he put away the plate. The Netherworld woman's face seemed to have regained some of its rosy color after eating the dragon blood rice. When she heard Bufang's words, her pitch-black eyes moved, and a trace of anxiety appeared in them. Her long black hair curled up and wrapped around Bufang's arm. "Give me another portion," the woman said stubbornly. Bufang furrowed his brows and turned his head to look at the ice-cold black hair that wrapped around his arm. Then, he looked at the Netherworld woman's pitch-black eyes. He didn't say anything, and he just looked at her. The Netherworld woman's lips moved, and her black hair loosened. "You know how to cook. You're awesome. I don't have any ingredients now, so I can't cook anymore. That's why I don't have any more." Bufang's gaze became gentler as he explained everything to her. A trace of grievance appeared on the Netherworld woman's stiff face. She stuck out her tongue and licked her fair and slender palm. The fragrance of the dragon blood rice still lingered on her palm. The Lord Go strode over to the Netherworld woman's side with happy cat-like steps. "Bufang doesn't have any ingredients now, but it doesn't mean that he won't have any in the future. You can follow him and pester him. Won't you have something to eat then?" The Lord Go moved his head closer to the Netherworld woman and whispered, "The Lord Go believes in you, and he favors you." Chapter 470. The Netherworld woman's gaze was somewhat sluggish as she looked at the Lord Go. The fat on his face was jiggling as he spoke with a gentle and magnetic voice. It seemed as though he was trying to bewitch her. However, what he said made sense. The Netherworld woman licked her lips, and she couldn't help but feel somewhat tempted. However, she was still somewhat hesitant. She wasn't sure whether or not Bufang would be able to provide her with dishes filled with rich spiritual essence after leaving the secret realm. If she couldn't replenish her spiritual essence, she would suffer a backlash from the curse, and her body would suffer a torturous pain. She would feel as though she was being sliced by 1,000 blades or being bitten by 10,000 ants. This was why she was somewhat hesitant and indecisive. There were many natural treasures filled with spiritual essence in the secret realm. If she needed them, she could just pluck them. However, if she left the secret realm, it would be much more difficult for her to find natural treasures. This was a matter that she had to make a decision about. She recalled the piping hot dragon blood rice, and the wonderful feeling she got when the warm rice flowed down her ice-cold throat and entered her stomach. She couldn't bear to part with such a feeling. That kid doesn't know anything else, but he does know how to cook. I believe that you, the Lord Go, won't deceive you. You must follow your instincts. Although you are cursed and banished, you can still live your own life." The Lord Go continued to use his magnetic voice to bewitch her. At this moment, Bufang didn't know what the Lord Go and the Netherworld woman were doing. He was walking in this space, which couldn't be considered very big. Lava surged around him, and waves of heat surged around him. After losing the phoenix egg, the spiritual energy in this space quickly decreased, and it didn't have the previous feeling of being able to penetrate his pores anymore. He wanted to see if there were any other spirit herbs around, but he was destined to be disappointed. Perhaps it was because of the phoenix egg and the bone-metamorphosing dragon grass, but the spiritual energy in the surroundings had been plundered, and other spirit herbs couldn't grow here. After taking a stroll around the place, Bufang decided to leave. There wasn't any meaning in staying here any longer. Xiao Bai blindly followed behind Bufang, and its purple eyes flickered. Xiaopi waved its sickle-like claws and rolled its compound eyes. "Let's go. We should leave this space," Bufang said to Lord Dog, who was talking to the Netherworld woman in the distance. The Lord Go waved its tail and gave the Netherworld woman a look that said, "You understand." Then, it walked with enchanting cat-like steps toward Bufang. Bufang looked at the Netherworld woman, who was standing in a daze, but he didn't say anything. He turned around and left. The Netherworld woman's long black hair fluttered as it was blown by the heat wave. Her perfectly straight and exquisite legs slowly opened up as her sparkling jade-like feet stepped on the ground. In the next moment, Bufang felt a gust of wind blow past him. The Netherworld woman was following behind him with an expressionless face. Bufang was taken aback, but he didn't care about it. There was only one way to leave this place, and the Netherworld woman was probably heading in the same direction as him. After walking out of the crack, Bufang returned to the dilapidated Gourmet Island. The auspicious Gourmet Island, which was filled with exotic delicacies, was now in ruins. The spirit trees, which were filled with exotic delicacies, were destroyed and engulfed by the magma. They had turned into charcoal, and steam was still rising from them. The grass on the ground was scorched, and cracks could be seen on the ground. Bufang stepped on the ground and looked at the desolate Gourmet Island. He couldn't help but sigh, and he felt that it was a pity for him. A gourmet island, which was a miracle of nature, was very rare for a chef. It was a pity that beautiful things didn't last long. The destruction of the gourmet island made Bufang sad, but he couldn't stop it. After circling the dilapidated delicacy island, Bufang couldn't help but furrow his brows. His spirit boat was gone. How was he going to leave this place without a spirit boat? Moreover, how was he going to leave this secret realm? These were all things that gave him a headache. There should be many people who had entered the secret realm who were still alive. After all, not all of them had come to the gourmet island, and there should be some people who were still alive on the other island. It was just that they didn't make it in time. Of course, it was also possible that they had encountered an opportunity that was more suitable for them. The Netherworld woman, who was standing behind Bufang, emitted a cold aura. Bufang couldn't help but shiver, and he subconsciously turned his head to look at her. The Netherworld woman nodded at Bufang, then pointed at the Netherworld ship, which was floating in the sky. "Do you mean that I can ride on your Netherworld ship?" Bufang was taken aback. The Netherworld woman expressionlessly nodded her head. She swung her beautiful legs, and her small, sparkling feet stepped on the ground. She soared into the sky, and her pitch-black hair fluttered in the wind as she landed on the Netherworld ship. Bufang raised his head, and after hesitating for a moment, he also flew onto the ship. "How can I accept this? Although your ship is a little gloomy, it is still much more expensive than a spirit ship," Bufang said, but he had already landed on the deck and was looking around. The Lord Go opened his big mouth and yawned. He found a place on the deck, laid down, and slept soundly. The Netherworld woman glanced at Bufang, then she stood at the front of the deck. the netherworld ship rumbled, and it started to move slowly. With a loud bang, the netherworld ship entered the water, and it set off huge wave. The pitch-black sails fluttered in the wind, and they pushed the netherworld ship forward, braving the wind and breaking through the waves. Bufang wandered around the netherworld ship with great interest. In all honesty, the netherworld ship's workmanship was extremely exquisite, and it was made of an extraordinary material. Although it looked shabby on the surface, and it gave off a gloomy feeling, if one were to look carefully, they would discover that the ship was so exquisite that it would cause anyone to exclaim in admiration. All of a sudden, Bufang's gaze fell on the cabin of the ship. Looking at the tightly shut cabin door, Bufang suddenly remembered something. He seemed to remember that Nangong Wuk, that clown, was also on this ship. When that fellow was pulled into the cabin, his expression of despair was still deeply imprinted in Bufang's mind. Well, they made such a big commotion, but Nangong Wuk still didn't come out. Could it be that he was embarrassed? Bufang took a few steps and arrived in front of the cabin door. He hesitated for a moment, then raised his hand, intending to open the cabin door. However, just as his hand touched the cabin door, he felt a gloomy and cold aura behind him. Bufang's body stiffened, and he turned his head around to look at the netherworld woman's ice-cold and beautiful face. Nangong Wuk's nostrils flared, and he breathed heavily. His whole body was drenched in sweat, and his muscles were bulging. An unyielding will was supporting his body. He wasn't willing to admit defeat. He wasn't willing to admit defeat. He was the man who would manage the Nangong family in the future. How could he stay in a ship and be licked to death by a woman? No. This was absolutely unforgivable. He had to struggle, and he had to endure this enormous pressure and climb out of this gloomy ship. He couldn't die here. Bean-sized beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. They streaked across his eyes, his nose, the corners of his mouth, and his chin before they fell to the ground. His heavy breathing echoed in the silent and cold cabin. He was getting closer. He was really getting closer. He was about to touch the cabin door. His spring had arrived. Creak, his face was filled with malevolence. He clenched his teeth and raised his hand. It seemed like his fingertips were about to touch the cabin door. However, right at that moment, a heavy sound echoed, and the cabin door was opened. Rays of light shone through the cabin door, and they illuminated Nangong Wuk's eyes. He couldn't help but shed tears. A figure was standing in front of the cabin door. Nangong Wuk raised his head, and tears streamed down his face. It didn't seem to be that voluptuous woman with long black hair. That figure seemed somewhat familiar. Bufang had just pushed open the cabin door when he saw Nangong Wuk, who was lying on the ground with his head tilted up and his nostrils wide open, and tears streamed down his face. What the F***ck? Where did this lunatic come from? Bufang was startled. He raised his leg and almost kicked Nangong Wuk's face. However, when he recalled Nangong Wuk's face, Bufang managed to restrain himself. Old Bu? Why is it you? Am I dreaming? Nangong Wuk's tears flowed down uncontrollably. He was somewhat dumbfounded. Bufang lowered his leg, nodded, and calmly said, "It's me." Nangong Wuk felt as though his spring had arrived. That smirking expression was indeed Old Bu's. Nangong Wuk's expression stiffened. A pair of fair and perfect legs stretched out from behind Bufang, and a graceful figure stood beside Bufang. The netherworld woman's expressionless face entered his line of sight. Nangong Wuk was dumbfounded. His mouth trembled, and sorrow welled up in his heart. It wasn't easy for him to reach this place. The netherworld woman raised her slender palm and waved it. Nangong Wuk grabbed the ground and was pulled into the depths of the cabin. Why am I always the one who gets hurt? Nangong Wuk felt as though he had nothing left to live for. The netherworld woman had once again mercilessly crushed his dreams and expectations. Bufang was taken aback. It seemed as though he was confused by the relationship between Nangong Wuk and the netherworld woman. What was going on? Was it the legendary love-hate relationship? Bufang explained it to the Netherworld woman for a long time. He told her that Nangong Wuk was his friend, and he hoped that she would release him. The Netherworld woman expressionlessly listened to him, and she shook her head. Nangong Wuk's cries, which sounded like a pig being slaughtered, echoed from the cabin. Bufang curled up the corners of his mouth and said, "I will use a bowl of dragon blood rice to exchange for this guy. Is that fine?" The Netherworld woman was taken aback. Her small mouth pouted, and she nodded her head in an adorable manner. Bufang was taken aback. What happened to her principles? What happened to her persistence? As expected, Nangong Wuk was only worth a bowl of dragon blood rice. The Netherworld woman's adorable expression only appeared for a moment, and it quickly became ice-cold and merciless. She looked at the cabin with her pitch-black eyes and waved her hand. Nangong Wuk felt the pressure that had been pressing down on him suddenly disappear. He crawled up from the ground in disbelief, and his face was filled with joy. After he crawled up from the ground, he rushed out while wailing like a ghost. "Old Boo! From now on I, Nangong Wuk, am yours." Nangong Wuk was so moved that he wanted to cry. He knew that it was Bufang who had saved him. The Netherworld woman, who was standing beside Bufang, had an ice-cold expression on her face as she looked at the elated Nangong Wuk. Nangong Wuk's body trembled, and he looked at this beautiful woman in fear. She was king she-devil. Therefore, he gave up on giving Bufang a big hug and decided to stay away from this woman first. After seeing Nangong Wuk leave, the Netherworld woman shifted her gaze and looked at Bufang. "Hurry up and cook my meal." Bufang was having a headache. Without the blood crown, how was he going to make dragon blood rice? Chapter 471. The Netherworld woman couldn't wait to taste the dragon blood rice cooked by Bufang again. It wasn't only because of the rich spiritual essence contained within it, but it was also because the taste of the dragon blood rice was simply too delicious when compared to those natural treasures. The taste buds that were stirred up by the dragon blood rice, which made her whole body tremble, was simply too wonderful. She had unknowingly become addicted to this feeling, and she wanted to taste the dragon blood rice cooked by Bufang again. Compared to the Netherworld woman's anxiety, Bufang felt a headache coming on. It wasn't that he didn't want to cook it, but he didn't have the ingredients. He did have the dragon blood rice, but it was impossible to bring out the full flavor of the dragon blood rice by relying on it alone. Without the nourishment of the blood crown, the taste of the dragon blood rice would be much worse. Of course, if it was just stir-frying the dragon blood rice, Bufang would be able to do it. He could even stir-fry the dragon blood rice, and it wouldn't be difficult for him to do so. However, without the blood crown, the dragon blood rice wouldn't be able to provide the Netherworld woman with enough spiritual essence. It would be an insult to a chef if he couldn't give his customers a perfect tasting experience. Bufang naturally wouldn't allow himself to cook such a dish. The Netherworld woman's pitch-black gaze was fixed on Bufang, and it made Bufang's hair stand on end. Her pure gaze was filled with expectation. Bufang felt that if he rejected her, he would be committing a crime. "Bufang, kiddo, don't you have the crystal source purple essence?" Lord Go, who was lying on the ground and taking a nap, suddenly appeared beside Bufang and whispered something to him. "Crystal source purple essence?" Bufang's eyes lit up. That's right. Although he didn't have the blood crown, he had the crystal source purple essence, which was a natural treasure. Compared to the blood crown, the crystal source purple essence's essence energy was much richer and more abundant. After all, the Netherworld woman had flown into a rage because of the crystal source purple essence. After thinking it through, Bufang suddenly looked at Lord Go suspiciously. He knew that this lazy dog's motive for bringing up the crystal source purple essence was definitely not that simple. Bufang realized that this lazy dog had become a lot more meticulous even though they hadn't seen each other for a long time. The crystal source purple essence is a great tonic. Even if you don't cook it, just eating it will still taste very good. Moreover, it's rich in essence energy. It's very effective in dispelling the Netherworld woman's curse, Lord Go explained to Bufang. When the Netherworld woman heard Lord Go's words, her eyes lit up. Bufang was speechless. He felt that something was wrong. What you said makes sense. However, we should first find a way to leave the Cloud Sea secret zone. Before we leave, I will cook a dish for this woman. After saying this, Bufang walked away without turning his head back. The Netherworld woman became somewhat anxious. She strode forward with her slender and beautiful legs and followed behind Bufang. Old Bu, is this a fat dog raised by your family? I didn't see it in the store. Nangong Wuk's eyes lit up when he saw Lord Go. His first impression was that this black dog was really fat. His second impression was that such a fat dog would definitely taste good. Nangong Wuk had once stolen a chicken in the pill tower. When he saw this black dog, he subconsciously wanted to pet it. Stealing a chicken and touching a dog was the most exciting thing in the world. However, when he saw the woman with long black hair standing behind Bufang, his whole body trembled. He was truly frightened by this woman, and a shadow had formed in his heart. Lord Go seemed to have sensed Nangong Wuk's malicious gaze. He curled up the corners of his mouth and didn't pay any attention to this clown. We have entered this secret realm. How are we going to leave? Bufang didn't answer Nangong Wuk's question. Instead, he asked another question. If they wanted to leave this secret realm, they would definitely need Nangong Wuk's help. Although this guy was a clown, he was still the successor of the Nangong family. His understanding of this secret realm was much greater than theirs. Since he knew how to enter, he naturally knew how to leave. Are we going to leave? Nangong Wuk was stupefied when he heard this question. Why are we leaving? What happened? Did the great battle in the secret realm already end? Did the fight for the fortuitous opportunities end? That's right. Why are we staying here if we don't leave? Bufang calmly glanced at him and replied. Nangong Wuk looked at the Netherworld woman. He suddenly had an urge to risk his life with this woman. He had painstakingly and complacently entered this secret realm in order to find fortuitous opportunities. He wanted to use them to seize back the Nangong family. However, what did this woman do? She imprisoned him in the pitch-black cabin and licked him from time to time. What happened in the end? He missed out on all the fortuitous opportunities, so he came to this secret realm just to be a bystander? To hell with being a bystander. Why is the whole world hurting me? He felt as if an invisible arrow had pierced through his heart, causing his tears to flow uncontrollably. Bufang didn't understand why he was crying again. How long had it been since they last met? Why did this clown cry like a woman? Other people came to the secret realm to fight for fortuitous opportunities. Could it be that this clown came to the secret realm to change his sex? The way to leave this secret realm is actually very simple. There is a teleportation array in this secret realm. It is the teleportation array that my Nangong family spent a large amount of money to build. This teleportation array can take us out of the Cloud Sea secret realm, Nangong Wuk said as he wiped his tears. He felt bitter in his heart, but he didn't say it out loud. A teleportation array? Bufang nodded. If there was a teleportation array, things would be much easier. Can you find the location of that teleportation array? Bring us there. I will immediately cook the improved dragon blood rice for you. Bufang turned around and said to the Netherworld woman, who was standing behind him. The Netherworld woman nodded and raised her palm. Immediately, the pitch-black sail fluttered in the wind, creating a gale as it broke through the waves and advanced forward. After a while, we will be able to see the teleportation array, the Netherworld woman said. Don't forget what you said. Bufang nodded calmly. Nangong Wuk blew his snot and shook his red hair. He pulled Bufang to the side and asked him about what happened in the secret realm. Nangong Wuk came to the Cloud Sea secret realm just to be a bystander. However, he had come here before, so he understood some things. Wouldn't it be easier for him to answer people's questions? Bufang didn't think too much about it, and he told Nangong Wuk everything he knew. Of course, there were some things that he concealed. For example, he obtained some natural treasures or accidentally plucked a phoenix egg. Nangong Xuanhe, that old dog, died? Ah, it's good that he died. Before entering the secret realm, I knew that the old dog would die. It was just as I expected. When he heard that the old dog, Nangong Xuanhe, actually died in the secret realm, he felt extremely delighted. Nangong Wuk felt as if he had obtained a peerless opportunity. He felt that this trip to the secret realm was worth it. Even if he didn't obtain anything, it was enough for him to obtain news about the old dog's death. Without Nangong Xuanhe, he would have a chance to regain control of the Nangong family after returning to the Heavenly Mist City. However, there was still Nangong Xuanhe, who was an expert who had broken through 2 of the Supreme Being's shackles. Nangong Wuk might not be his match. However, this wasn't a problem anymore. As long as the old dog, Nangong Xuanhe, died, the rest would be easy to deal with. Look, that's the teleportation array's location. The Netherworld woman, who had been silent all this while, suddenly spoke. She pointed at a beam of light that soared into the sky. That beam of light soared into the sky and penetrated the thick layer of clouds, causing the clouds to revolve like a vortex. It was quite magnificent. Bufang stood on the deck of the ship and looked into the distance. The teleportation array was located on a vast island. The Nangong family was really generous. They unexpectedly used an entire island as a teleportation array. On both sides of the Netherworld ship, there were many spirit boats sailing through the wave. Those were the lucky survivors. When those spirit boats reached the island, a black figure quickly flew out of them and entered the teleportation array. After Bufang confirmed the location of the teleportation array, he nodded his head. Black smoke curled up from his arm and a pitch-black black turtle constellation wok appeared in his hand. The black turtle constellation wok was still simple and heavy, and it emitted an aura that caused people's hearts to palpitate. Bufang opened his mouth and spouted a ball of golden flames. He started to fulfill his promise and cooked a bowl of dragon blood rice for the Netherworld woman. It could be considered his final reward. The Netherworld woman was filled with expectation as she stood there. Nangong Wuk stretched his neck and looked at the heaven and earth obsidian flame that Bufang spouted. He was envious. In the past, he was also a man who possessed a heaven and earth obsidian flame. A rich fragrance wafted out of the black turtle constellation wok, and it intoxicated both him and the Netherworld woman. However, there was no blood crown this time, so Bufang decided to use the crystal source purple essence instead. He took out a warm jade bottle from his system-dimensional bag. The jade bottle emitted a rich spiritual energy. The jade bottle contained the crystal source purple essence. It was the crystal source purple essence that was extracted from the crystal mine. The Lord Go's figure appeared beside Bufang, and it widened its eyes as it stared at the jade bottle in Bufang's hand. The familiar aroma wafting out of the jade bottle made the wolf dog extremely excited. It stuck out its tongue and saliva flew everywhere. The crystal source purple essence was a delicacy that was only inferior to the sweet and sour ribs. True energy appeared in Bufang's hand, and it emitted a suction force as it touched the bottle's mouth. In an instant, a drop of purple liquid floated out of the bottle and floated above his finger. It was the crystal source purple essence. Although it was just a drop, the spiritual energy it contained was enough to make one's heart tremble. Bufang put away the jade bottle and guided it to float above the black turtle constellation wok. Under everyone's gazes, the true energy on Bufang's fingertip turned into a sharp drill, and he ruthlessly drilled the drop of liquid. The sound of something breaking could be heard. The crystal source purple essence splashed out, and a small drop fell into the wok, causing the scarlet dragon blood rice to turn purple in an instant. The purple color was extremely bright. Bu Fong shook the wok and stir-fried the crystal source purple essence. The fragrance was even more intense than before, and it even surprised Bu Fong. The crystal source purple essence was actually such a powerful seasoning. Dense essence energy, overflowing spiritual energy, and surging steam filled the wok. Everyone couldn't help but take a deep breath of it. After scooping out the purple dragon blood rice from the wok, Bu Fong passed the blue and white porcelain bowl to the Netherworld woman. She impatiently took the bowl, and she didn't care that it was scalding hot. She grabbed a handful of rice and stuffed it into her mouth. The way she ate was a stark contrast to her cold and aloof appearance. Bu Fong, boy. What about me, the Lord Go? Give me a portion of it for the Lord Go as well. Old Bu. What about me? I haven't eaten anything for 3 days and 3 nights. Just when Bu Fong retracted his gaze, 2 greedy voices rang out beside him. Bu Fong couldn't help but shiver when he heard those voices. Chapter 472. As expected, Bu Fong knew that the lazy dog didn't remind him about the crystal source purple essence out of good intentions. It must have reminded him because it wanted to taste the crystal source purple essence. Lord Go looked at Bu Fong with sparkling eyes, which were filled with longing and expectation. Bu Fong was too embarrassed to refuse him. He scooped up a portion of dragon blood rice and gave it to Lord Go. Lord Go excitedly gobbled down the rice. His dog tail wagged unceasingly, which showed how happy he was at this moment. Lord Go was delighted with his quick-wittedness. In the past, he would swallow the crystal source purple essence in one gulp. Although the taste wasn't bad, there was something missing. Sure enough, if Bu Fong used the crystal source purple essence to cook, not only would he be able to taste the flavor of the crystal source purple essence, but he would also be able to taste the rare delicacy of the dragon blood rice. Why wouldn't he be happy? Old Bu, what about me? Give me a bowl as well. I haven't eaten anything for 3 days and 3 nights. Look, I'm so hungry that I've lost weight. Nangong Wuk said to Bu Fong with tears in his eyes. The fragrance emitted by the dragon blood rice stimulated the gluttonous worm in his stomach, which made him feel extremely uncomfortable. He was very clear about the taste of the dishes cooked by Bu Fong. It was a delicacy that he had never tasted before. Now that such a delicacy was right in front of him, how could he miss it? Bu Fong looked at him, and Nangong Wuk blinked his eyes to express his pity. No, this guy was really pitiful. Bu Fong scooped out the remaining dragon blood rice from the black turtle constellation wok. However, it was only half a bowl. So be it. Nangong Wuk felt somewhat stifled. Half a bowl wasn't even enough for him to eat a few mouthfuls. However, having something to eat was better than not having anything to eat. Nangong Wuk took the blue and white porcelain plate from Bu Fong and started to eat excitedly. With just a single bite, he felt as though all the pores on his body had opened up. Dense essence energy surged through his body, making him feel as though he had ascended. This rice is so awesome. Nangong Wuk opened his eyes wide. He felt a warm current circulating within his body, cleansing his body. Filth was constantly being washed out of his body. He finished the rest of the dragon blood rice in 2 or 3 mouthfuls. Once it entered his stomach, he felt energy sweeping through his body. His entire body seemed to be emitting a sparkling brilliance. The energy filled his body, making him feel like he was about to explode. It's too huge. Is this really something that a bowl of rice can achieve? What he was eating was not rice. It was as if he had swallowed an elixir. It could even be said that ordinary pills couldn't achieve this effect. Nangong Wuk immediately sat down cross-legged. His whole body was dazzling, and his sleeves fluttered in the wind. His aura started fluctuating. A bowl of dragon blood rice had given him the opportunity to break through. The netherworld ship was still braving the wind and breaking the waves as it moved forward. The distant Array Island could already be seen clearly. The island was full of people. Everyone also saw the netherworld ship. This ship was very famous in the secret territory, but not everyone recognized it. Looking at the ship, everyone felt a chill run down their spines and their hair stood on end. It was an extremely terrifying ship. Who was on that ship? Yang Meiji supported the feeble Master Xianbei. The two of them were in the teleportation array, waiting to be teleported out. Naturally, they also saw the pitch-black netherworld ship. Yang Meiji's muscles started to tremble. Others might not recognize it, but she naturally recognized it. Back when they were in the crack, the netherworld ship revealed its unparalleled might. Even the man covered in blood was somewhat afraid of that ship. Why would such a terrifying ship appear here? Could it be that the ship wanted to stop them from leaving the secret territory? Did it want to destroy their teleportation array? When she thought of this, Yang Meiji felt as though all of her energy was being sucked out. If the teleportation array was destroyed, then all of them would really die here. Nangong Xuanhu wore a solemn expression as he stood in the teleportation array. His heart was pounding, and he felt as though something bad was about to happen. What happened to his big brother, Nangong Xuanha? Why hasn't he come out yet? Did something happen to him? It was normal for accidents to happen in the secret territory. Even an existence like Nangong Wangtian died in the secret territory. It was quite possible that something happened to Nangong Xuanha. However, Nangong Xuanhu still prayed that his big brother could come out alive. He had already lost his second brother, and he didn't want to lose his big brother as well. The netherworld ship broke through the waves, and it caused a lot of panic. All of a sudden, a beam of light shot out from the netherworld ship. Although it wasn't as intense as the beam of light from the teleportation array, it still contained intense energy fluctuations. A pitch-black chain appeared in the void, and it collided with the chain, emitting a clanking sound. Was someone making a breakthrough? Everyone was startled. Most of the experts here had broken through one of the Supreme Being's shackles, and they clearly understood what such a scene signified. Who was making a breakthrough? Moreover, from the looks of it, it wasn't just one shackle that was severed. Rather, it was the second shackle. This was quite amazing. It seemed like the person who made a breakthrough had obtained a great opportunity in the secret territory. Buzz. The teleportation array seemed to have been affected by the aura of a breakthrough, and its energy surged as it started operating ahead of time. The flickering radiance of the array revolved, and it seemed as though it wanted to distort the void. A peculiar fluctuation spread out, and the teleportation array started. Buzz, a wave of fluctuation swept past, and Yang Meiji heaved a sigh of relief. Everything in front of her became blurry, and she quickly felt dizzy. The teleportation array had started. Nangong Xuanhu was also teleported away, and the experts who were originally on the teleportation array were also teleported out of the secret territory. The netherworld ship stopped, and it floated outside the teleportation array. Bufang, who was standing on the deck, had a profound look in his eyes as he looked at the teleportation array. Nangong Wuk, who was behind him, started restraining his energy, and his aura gradually calmed down. True energy fluctuations continuously rumbled around him. Behind him, two pitch-black chains swayed and fluttered in the wind. Nangong Wuk was so excited that he wanted to shout. He didn't expect that he would be able to make a breakthrough just because of Bu Fang's bowl of rice. It seemed like the opportunity had come, and he couldn't avoid it. Lord Go, who had also finished eating the dragon blood rice, squinted his eyes lazily and wagged his tail. The netherworld woman started to lick the plate again. Her tongue brushed across the blue and white porcelain plate, making it very clean. The teleportation array has been activated, so we should leave, Nangong Wuk said. Nangong Wuk nodded his head. He could finally leave this damned place, and he could finally distance himself from this crazy and terrifying woman. Nangong Wook wasn't just happy about his breakthrough, but he was also excited about leaving this crazy woman. He would probably have to suffer from nightmares for several days to wash away the fear the Netherworld woman had brought him. Bufang took the plate that the Netherworld woman passed to him, and he nodded his head. I have already fulfilled my promise to you. Let's part ways here, and we will meet again in the future. Bufang nodded his head at the Netherworld woman as he spoke. The Netherworld woman's tall and slender body didn't have the slightest expression on it. She just calmly looked at Bufang and didn't reply. Bufang didn't care about it. He turned around and stepped on the wall of the Netherworld ship. The wind whistled as it blew past him, and his hair fluttered in the wind. In the next moment, he exerted force on his feet, and he jumped out of the Netherworld ship, and he rushed toward the teleportation array below. Xiao Bai's purple eyes flickered, and the metal wings on his back spread open. He flapped them for a while, and he followed after Nangong Wook. Nangong Wook took a look at the Netherworld woman, and he heaved a sigh of relief before he also left the Netherworld ship. In the end, only the Netherworld woman and the Lord Go were left on the huge Netherworld ship. The Lord Go looked at the Netherworld woman with a profound and meaningful gaze, and with a swoosh, he disappeared from his original position. The Netherworld woman was left alone in her original position. The wind blew gently, and the Netherworld woman's pitch-black dress fluttered in the wind. Her pitch-black eyes seemed to have a radiance circulating within them. Her sparkling feet lightly stepped on the deck of the ship, and she walked toward the deck. She looked at Bufang and Nangong Wook, who had been teleported away by the teleportation array. She stuck out her tongue, and she licked her lips as she savored the taste of the dragon blood rice. Then, a rosy flush appeared on her pale skin, and a trace of excitement flickered in her pitch-black eyes. She exerted force with her fair and slender legs, and she jumped out of the Netherworld ship. With a single thought, the enormous Netherworld ship emitted a rumbling sound, and it quickly shrank. It turned into a small pendant, which the Netherworld woman wore around her neck. The Netherworld woman's clothes fluttered in the wind, and she also descended toward the teleportation array. The world spun around him, and Bufang opened his eyes. In front of him was the familiar Nangong family's building, and there was a teleportation array in that spacious and empty building. It seemed like they had returned to Heavenly Mist City from the secret realm. There were many people in the building, and they were the guards of the Nangong family's teleportation array. The people who were teleported out of the teleportation array had already left. Bufang walked out of the teleportation array, and Nangong Wook and the others appeared behind him. Xiao Bai retracted his metallic wings, and he continued to follow behind Bufang. As for Lord Go, he strode forward with his enchanting cat-like steps, and he walked leisurely. Nangong Wook felt as though his whole body was brimming with energy, and when he breathed in the Heavenly Mist City's aura, he felt as though he had come back to life. To him, this trip to the secret realm was truly an indescribable nightmare. Now that he had finally gotten rid of this nightmare, his body and mind became joyful, and he felt incomparably happy. The most important thing was that his cultivation had actually made a breakthrough, and this was what excited him the most. Since his cultivation had made a breakthrough, and that old dog Nangong Xuanhe had died in the secret realm, it was time for him to regroup and take back everything that belonged to him. There was also the matter of saving Nangong Wan. It was fortunate that she hadn't married that sissy, Mu Chunfeng. No one expected that the genius alchemist of Heavenly Pill City, Mu Chunfeng, would actually die in the secret realm. Not only that, but Nangong Wook suddenly took a deep breath. He felt as though the Heavenly Mist City was about to undergo a huge earthquake. After all, many genius disciples of first-rate factions had died in the Cloud Sea secret realm, and this wasn't a small matter. The Heavenly Mist City would soon be in an uproar. Nangong Wook stood beside the teleportation array with his hands clasped behind his back, and he sighed with emotion. All of a sudden, the teleportation array behind him lit up. Nangong Wook was taken aback. How could someone be teleported out? He subconsciously turned around, and what he saw was a beautiful, ice-cold face. Her beauty was beyond compare. Nangong Wook felt all the hair on his body stand up, and he was so scared that he almost peed his pants. My little heart! Why was this crazy woman also teleported out? Chapter 473. When Nangong Wook saw the Netherworld woman, he was completely stupefied. Her beautiful face caused his heart to tremble, and her ice-cold temperament caused his body to stiffen. Why did this woman appear here? Shouldn't she always stay in the secret realm? If he left the secret realm, wouldn't he never be able to see her again? This woman was like a nightmare to him. The Netherworld woman had a tall and slender figure. She wore a black dress that wrapped around her voluptuous body, and her fair and beautiful legs were perfectly straight. She calmly stood in the middle of the teleportation array, and her pitch-black eyes passed through the array and fell on Bufang. Bufang also heard the commotion behind him, so he turned his head around and saw the Netherworld woman standing in the teleportation array. Her long black hair draped over her shoulders, reaching her waist. Coupled with her pale and beautiful face, she left a deep impression on anyone who saw her. Netherworld woman? Bufang was startled. Like him, he was also somewhat puzzled. Why did this woman appear here? The Lord Go squinted his eyes and grinned as he wagged his tail in a gratified manner. Maybe she doesn't want to part with the food you cooked? The Lord Go said in a gentle and magnetic voice. Bufang was startled, and he shot a glance at the plump dog. The plump dog's words made sense. The Netherworld woman took a step forward. She didn't wear any shoes on her fair feet, and it seemed like she didn't like wearing shoes. Her sparkling toes touched the ground as she slowly walked forward. She walked out of the teleportation array and followed behind Bufang. Do you still want to eat the dragon blood rice? Bufang asked calmly. The Netherworld woman's gaze didn't change, and she expressionlessly nodded. The dragon blood rice, which had been infused with crystal source purple essence, completely attracted the Netherworld woman. The spiritual essence contained within the dragon blood rice, which was infused with crystal source purple essence, was much stronger than ordinary natural treasures. If she could frequently eat such dishes by following Bufang, the curse on her body would be easily suppressed. This way, she wouldn't have to endure hellish torment when she couldn't find any natural treasures. She didn't need much, and her goal was also very simple. She just didn't want to endure too much pain. Bufang furrowed his brows when he saw the Netherworld woman's gaze. He could sense the desire in her eyes. Bufang, take this girl with you. Don't you need a waitress in your new restaurant? You can't let Xiao Yi come to your new store, can you? Lord Go's voice rang in Bufang's ears again. Bufang glanced at the plump dog and felt that something was amiss. Don't tell me that I've become the Lord Go's accomplice in kidnapping the Netherworld woman? This possibility was very high. However, after thinking about it carefully, Bufang felt that it made sense. The Cloud Mist restaurant was indeed lacking a waiter. This woman was originally staying in a secret realm. Now that she had come to Heavenly Mist City, she should also be homeless. If he didn't accept her and let her wander the continent, it would be somewhat unreasonable. Of course, he could also hand this woman over to Nangong Wook. However, Nangong Wook's face was filled with fright when he saw the Netherworld woman, so he knew that this method wouldn't work. So, he could only let her follow him. Fine, you can follow me. Bufang nodded his head. The Netherworld woman's eyes lit up, and she pouted to express her happiness. Old Boo, are you really going to accept this woman? Nangong Wook's face was filled with disbelief as he looked at Bufang. Why did it have to be like this? How could he go to Bufang's store in the future? However, before Nangong Wuk could finish his words, he felt a gaze filled with killing intent. The netherworld woman turned her head and looked at him. Her pitch-black eyes seemed to be filled with killing intent. "Don't be like this. Sister, you're awesome." Nangong Wuk immediately became terrified, and he forcefully swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. Everyone left the Nangong family's building and went to the streets of Heavenly Mist City. The streets were filled with people, and it was bustling with noise and excitement. Although the battles in the secret realm were intense, and the number of people who died was quite disastrous, Heavenly Mist City was still the same as before. It was prosperous and peaceful. Spirit beast carriages flew past the city, and tall buildings rose from the ground. The sounds of people selling their wares, and the fragrance of elixirs, and many other things engulfed this restless city. Nangong Wuk bid farewell to Bufang and left. His cultivation had already broken through, and he still had important matters to take care of. Bufang nodded his head and didn't say anything. He brought along Xiao Bai, Blackie, and Xiaopi, who was lying on his shoulder, and slowly walked toward the Heavenly Mist City's Cloud Mist restaurant. At this moment, another figure appeared behind Bufang. It was the Netherworld woman's slender figure. Pill Tower. In the Pill Tower, which was shrouded in mist, an old man was sitting cross-legged in a secret alchemy room. An old man was sitting cross-legged in a secret alchemy room, and blood was unceasingly flowing out of his mouth. This old man was Master Xianbei, who Yang Meiji had brought out of the secret realm. He had broken through 3 of the Supreme Being's shackles, and he was severely injured by the man covered in blood. He needed time to recover. Yang Meiji stood nervously in the secret room, and she looked at her teacher, who was recovering. After a long time, Master Xianbei's aura recovered slightly. He opened his eyes and waved his hand at Yang Meiji. "You should return to your secret room and cultivate properly. This time, try to break through to the divine physique echelon. At that time, I will give you some good things," Master Xianbei said weakly. Yang Meiji nodded her head respectfully, and she turned around and left the secret room. She had obtained many good things in this trip to the secret realm. Although they weren't as good as Bufang's, she had obtained many natural treasures while following Master Xianbei. These things were enough for her to refine a batch of high-quality 1-mark spirit pills. Moreover, she would be able to break through to the divine physique echelon. She was already half a step into the divine realm, and it wouldn't be difficult for her to break through to the divine physique echelon. Of course, she was also curious about what good things her teacher had prepared for her. After Yang Meiji left, Master Xianbei let out a long breath. He raised his trembling hand, and a ball of white flame danced in his palm. "Heaven and Earth Obsidian Flame, the 9 Hell King Flame? I hope that this flame can help Yang Meiji reach a higher level. I hope that she will be able to obtain a good ranking in the upcoming competition. I hope that she can enter the Heavenly Pill City's Pill Tower to cultivate." This was the 9 Hell King Flame. After Nangong Xuanhe died, this old man extracted it from his corpse. He didn't choose to fuse with it himself. Instead, he wanted to let Yang Meiji fuse with it. After all, he was already old, and his potential was exhausted. However, Yang Meiji was the disciple he was most proud of. Yang Meiji's talent in alchemy was the best he had ever seen. Even the monstrous genius of Heavenly Mist City, Nangong Wuk, couldn't compare to her. It was said that this 9 Hell King Flame originally belonged to Nangong Wuk. However, this Heaven and Earth Obsidian Flame belongs to me now. I have the final say in everything. Bufang returned to the area where the Cloud Mist restaurant was located. Although Bufang felt that they hadn't been in the secret realm for a long time, more than a month had already passed in the outside world. Since the Cloud Mist restaurant hadn't opened for business for more than a month, the surrounding elixir stores became very popular. Originally, the Nangong family chose this location because they knew that their business would flourish. However, they didn't expect that the Cloud Mist restaurant would suddenly appear and use such an unreasonable method to snatch away the elixir store's business. What the F***CK? Isn't that owner Boo? Did he come back from the secret realm? Oh my god! Owner Boo is back! My store is going to open for business again. Isn't opening for business the same as losing our jobs? My heart feels so stifled. I feel so uncomfortable that I want to cry. When the owners of the surrounding elixir stores saw Bufang and his entourage, their faces darkened. Bufang, on the other hand, was quite calm. He expressionlessly nodded at the owners, as though he was greeting old friends. Actually, the owners of these elixir stores were quite familiar with Bufang. All of them had eaten in his restaurant before. Bufang had always been gentle toward his customers. Except for the owners of the elixir stores, the eyes of the customers who had been buying elixirs lit up. After waiting for so long, Owner Boo had finally returned. They could once again taste the delicacies that had intoxicated them. Stinky tofu. Buddha jumps over the wall soup. Those delicacies that had intoxicated them. A group of people followed behind Bufang, waiting for Bufang to open the restaurant's doors. However, after following Bufang for a while, many people's gazes were involuntarily attracted by the graceful figure wrapped in a black dress. She had a peerlessly beautiful face, a devilish figure, and especially her fair, jade-like legs. What the? Owner Boo went out for a trip, so how did he bring back such a beautiful woman? How could Owner Boo face our Nangong goddess? The numerous customers were filled with righteous indignation, but their gazes were still fixed on the Netherworld woman. The Netherworld woman's footsteps stopped, and she coldly turned around. Her pitch-black pupils swept through the crowd. In an instant, the customers felt as though their bodies had been enveloped by a layer of ice. This woman's gaze was so terrifying. Everyone shuddered. They were all subdued by the Netherworld woman. When the Netherworld woman turned around and continued to twist her devilish body, Duan Ling Tian's eyes widened. The customers immediately burst into an uproar. What an aloof goddess! She's as cold as Owner Boo, but she's so beautiful. Was the goddess looking at me a moment ago? I think so. In the future, I will come here to see the goddess every day. After opening the bronze door, Bufang returned to the store. Do you have a name? Bufang turned his head to look at the Netherworld woman and asked. The Netherworld woman glanced at him, but she didn't say anything. Her face was cold and detached. Bufang felt a toothache, and he looked at the Lord Go with an inquiring gaze. Don't look at the Lord Go. How would the Lord Go know? Blackie rolled its eyes and yawned. It strode with enchanting cat-like steps and ran toward the path understanding tree. Then, it lay down on the tree and slept soundly. Eating, sleeping, and walking cat-like steps were all part of the Lord Go's daily routine. In that case, I will call you Nangong from now on. From today onwards, you will be a waiter of the Cloud Mist restaurant. You don't have any other duties besides recording the customers' orders and reporting them to me. Every day, I will provide you with dishes filled with spiritual essence. Just treat it as a reward. Bufang said. In any case, feeding the Lord Go was the same as feeding the Lord Go, so feeding you wouldn't make any difference. When the Lord Go heard the name you, the corners of his mouth twitched. Even a dog couldn't bear to listen to Bufang's naming technique. The Netherworld woman was dazed for a moment, and she nodded her head. Then, Bufang exhaled and curled up the corners of his mouth. He turned around and entered the kitchen. Then, let's start the business now, Bufang said. Meanwhile, Nangong Wuk, who had just entered the Nangong family's courtyard, emitted a baleful aura. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.